All set, thank you. Good evening, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Item 1.02, approve the agenda.
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections?
None to the, or one on the agenda. We made an adjustment since Friday on section 7.1. It should read food service helper, not substitute food service helper. 7.10. Olivia Neerman.
Thank you very much. Any other additions or corrections or questions?
Not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and abstentions, passed 6-0-0. I forgot to tell you, Mr. Connors isn't here this evening, he's under the weather. Wish him a speedy recovery. Item 1.03, our evacuation procedure. So we have doors at either end of this room, and I would ask in an emergency for you to exit either door and do it in an orderly fashion and move out and away from the building. Would you join us in the pledge to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No one signed up for public forum this evening, so we're going to move on to item 1.06 to approve October 11th meeting minutes.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, on October, the October 11th, on that, we should have, and that's under section, let's see, 6.09, and that's under Nicole Henderson. It originally had read full-time food service helper. That's not a title. We have food service helper is the correct title, so it's just an accurate title. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed and abstentions. Passed 6-0-0. Are there any questions for, with regard to any items listed in the President's report?
Only for the Thursday event at 7, are we meeting and going together, or? I know that I'll be coming from work, so I won't be there probably for the 5.
Can we text you once we know what we're
That'd be
doing?
great. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, King's, their actual place is around over on West Street, so there's
Okay.
really not a way to get from Market, or from
Okay.
Armory Square through.
So once we
I
figure it
would
out, I'll
say-
make sure that someone contacts you, Dave.
Great, thank you.
All right.
That's not good.
They work together.
We'll figure it out.
Um,
And I know I know Jean provided a great deal of information. Is that in the, at your spots this evening? Would you like to talk about that?
Yep, everybody has a package, so there's a map, there's forms, if you have expenses, there's forms if you're traveling for your mileage. There's a tax exempt form in there, the hotel already has that, and they also have the credit card authorization. And Brian should be there early enough, so you won't have to, you may have to show a credit card for individual expenses should you have some left. I don't know if you'll have to do that. There is parking at the hotel, but it's limited. So the Clinton Street garage is also available, but there's a $15 charge. So we can obviously expense that.
I want to thank you, Mrs. Perry, for taking good care of us and having us well prepared for the event.
I want everybody to just enjoy themselves.
Thank you.
So we plan on leaving here around 1 o'clock for those of you that want to ride with us or ride with me. I'm more than willing to fill my car with as many individuals as would like to ride along. So just let me or Jean know over the next couple of days and we'll be all set.
Sounds good. And Mrs. Pappalardo, you were busy and did our voting. You were our voting delegate.
Thank you for that.
And I'm wondering if you have anything you'd like to share with the board this evening with regard to that.
No, I mean, you guys we voted on the proposed resolutions. I actually left the meeting a little bit early. After 4 hours, my computer died, so, I missed, how many do you think I missed, like the last
No,
six?
some of the non-recommended.
Right.
So, but
It was
everything.
a 5-hour meeting, so,
I had one of those many years ago.
but it was
Yes.
virtual, so that.
Mine wasn't. I missed the
different
bus back to my
experience.
hotel.
Yikes. Yeah, so nothing out of the ordinary, everything that we voted on was all, what we voted in favor for went in favor, so.
Well, thank you for doing that for
Yeah,
us,
absolutely.
and I wish it'd been I think it's more fun in person.
It is.
Oh, I feel like it would have been forever.
It probably would have
It
done more
was-
quickly, it would have done more quickly.
You think so?
I think, because the technology slowed it down.
Yeah, the technology
transition
did slow it down,
from-
the people who were talking, but
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, thank you. And Dave, I know that you did it for city.
Yep.
Anything?
Just as Jessica said, I mean, everything pretty much went the way the resolutions committee had recommended or not recommended, so
Okay.
that was the way it all went.
Great.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to turn the meeting over now to Superintendent Baldino.
Okay, thank you. So I did provide the results on Friday in your weekly. I provided the extra, Ms. Brooke provided all the results from the ballot. So I thought it was nicely contained, so I thought I sent that out, so you did have all of that. I wanted to just, this is, Board Recognition Week was last week in New York State, but we did at each of your spots this evening, there's a little token of our appreciation, a pin as well as a keychain. Just recognizing and thank you for your service here. We also have some refreshments, some cupcakes here for when we break this evening. So just wanted to thank you for your service. I'm looking forward. I think when I've asked around, I think we've probably got the most board members attending of any district that I'm aware of. So just shows your dedication, your commitment to our kids, to coming together, which makes us a stronger board and superintendent, but also there's a lot of new learnings and new opportunities to bring information back to our district. And one, recognize some things that we maybe do really well and don't realize it, and other areas where we really want to reflect and say, wow, let's take that idea and see what we can do with it and make it even better here.
It's a great way to get excited, get innovative about what we come here to do.
So it should be a lot of fun. We look forward to it. So we were talking about it for a long time, so we get to go this week. So our first report this evening is our 3A assessment report, and I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Geiger, and her team. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you. We're going to begin by just introducing who you will be hearing from this evening. Our principals. There we go. Mark Capani from the Fulton Junior High School. Jeff Hendrickson at Lanigan. Will Meekum from Fairgrave. Gina Salerno is unable to be with us this evening. She's completing her isolation, but sends her regards and contributed a great deal to the compilation of this presentation. Liz Stoddard from Valney. Our director team tonight, who participated in the development of this program and will present some of it. Renee Hendrickson, our Director of Humanities, Abby Hoffman, our Director of STEAM, and Dan Sherman, our Director of Technology and Data. So as we always do, we begin with the beginning, our mission and our vision, and the principles that we are really promoting this year. You belong here, it is safe to speak up here, and what we do is important. So throughout tonight's report, you're going to hear us referencing our mission and vision, and the work that we're doing, because we do truly believe that this is very important, and getting it right is really important. As you know, our focus is our strategic coherence plan. So what you'll hear about tonight is how we are focusing on Tier 1 instruction, multi-tiered systems of support, social emotional wellness of our students and our staff and our entire community, family and community engagement, which enriches our school program and supports the academic success of our students, and innovation. How can we do things more creatively, thinking outside the box, and putting in solutions that will benefit our students and keep us within our resources that we have. As we shared in the secondary assessment report, we do have a lot of data and feedback from students and families through surveys, through focus groups, through conversations. And so what our students at the elementary level, similar to what we heard from our high school level students, was that learning needs to be engaging and relevant. They need to understand what they're doing. They need to know why it's important. And our elementary students in particular talked about the importance of problem solving and hands-on experiences that help them internalize what they're learning. Our families have shared with us repeatedly that they need more meaningful information about how their students are progressing, how their children are doing, and how they will be prepared for life after high school graduation from our school district. So as I'm sure you heard in the news yesterday and read in media reports, the results have been released. Prior to yesterday, we did not have comparative results. What we know right now is that nationally and in New York State, reading results have declined since pre-pandemic time, and math results have declined significantly. And you can see that plays out in New York State, also played out here in our school district. And the results there are the percentages of total proficiency for students in grades 3 through 8 ELA in math in New York State and in Fulton. And you can see that our district rates are below the state rates. We also are encouraged, though, because we're hearing from the state that the assessments are important and they give us some valuable information. But New York State is recognizing that our accountability system isn't working to improve schools or student outcomes in the way that it was intended. And so there are proposals for changing that system and changing how we evaluate and how we support effective instructional practices in a way that is positive and reinforcing of innovation and risk-taking and creativity in schools. So we're looking forward to seeing specifically what those recommendations are. The comment period for the state accountability plan is still open, so we encourage anybody to take a look at that. We can provide you the link in the website where you can provide feedback to New York State about the accountability system as they look at those changes. So we wanted to give you a snapshot of a couple of different grade levels to begin this conversation before the directors present the data. So this timeline chronicles our current third grade students. And you can see in March of 20, when our schools were closed due to COVID, they were in first grade. So all of those students that year learned remotely for the last 3 months of the school year. At the time, 50% of the students in that cohort were at or above grade level in the fall when we did the DIBELS assessment. In second grade, those students learned remotely, in a hybrid model, I should say. And you can see that 47% of students at the beginning of that year were at or above grade level on the fall DIBELS. Going into their third grade year, we were back to in-person instruction, but as we know, we faced a lot of unanticipated interruptions due to COVID, quarantines, isolation periods, some school closings for short periods of time due to COVID exposure. So about 50% of our students in third grade were at or above grade level in the fall of 2021 when they came back to us. And in the spring, when they took the New York State assessment, 19% of those students scored in the proficient range on the ELA assessment. This year, we're in fourth grade, and 49% of our students began the school year in the fall, according to the DIBELS benchmark, at or above grade level for fourth grade. This is a similar timeline for our current seventh graders. And you can see they were in fourth grade when pandemic school closures occurred. At that time, we did not test all of our students on DIBELS in fourth grade. So we were testing students who were at risk and receiving intervention. So you'll see the difference between the first timeline and this one is that 20% of students who were tested were at or above grade level. In fifth grade, we tested all of those students. And 51% of the students in fifth grade were at or above grade level on the fall benchmark for DIBELS. In sixth grade, that number was 45% in the fall benchmark, and similarly, 45% of those students were proficient on the New York State assessment.
Sherry, may I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
When you say in the fall, grade level, what grade level? Are you
So-
saying fourth grade level or third grade level where they ended up at the end of third grade?
No, in sixth, so this group, in last year when they were in sixth grade, we
Yeah.
tested them in the fall for the beginning of the year benchmark testing.
So what grade, but what grade
They were in
level?
sixth grade.
In sixth grade.
In
So you
sixth
would
grade.
expect them to be at or grade level at the start of sixth grade?
That's what that measures, yes, where they are expected to be at that point in time when we give the assessment.
Okay,
Beginning of sixth grade level.
okay.
And at that time, 45% of them scored at or above the beginning of sixth grade level in the fall. This year, when they were assessed using the STAR, 56% of the students at the beginning of the 7th grade level were at or above grade level this year, same cohort of kids.
Right.
And STAR is nationally normed?
Correct.
So I guess going back to some of the confusion sometimes in trying to understand these results. It used to be on some of the older style tests, you would know it would say the grade for the month. So when you say fall, I wasn't sure though if you were, are we talking about, are they a grade level for where they should have ended up at the end of 3rd grade, for the start of 4th grade,
At grade level for where they should be at the beginning of 6th grade.
at the beginning of 6th grade?
So I think what you're referring to is we used to have grade level equivalents that would say 6 years, 6th grade.
Yes, so you
3
had a
months,
better
or-
understanding of where
Yes.
they were with this. When you first say that or read it, I have to stop, I have to pause and think that through, because it does not mean that those that are at or above,
Where we expect them to be at the beginning of 6th grade when the test is
right,
being
not, but when you say grade level, there's an implication that for the whole,
Right, now I understand what you're saying.
yes. So for clarity, I just wanted to bring that up, because it can be very confusing.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you for the question. So with that sort of preview, I'm going to turn it over to Abby and Renee, who are going to go through the specific results. And in your board backup, you have even more specific data. You have reps by grade level. They're going to provide a district overview for you this evening.
Mike. Have to do it.
Sorry, Renee.
The graph that you're about to see, it represents the overall data for grades 3 through 8 who participated in the New York State ELA assessment. So overall proficiencies at the end of last year was 31% proficient in ELA, which is 405 students of our 1,308 tested. Of our 220 students classified as a student with a disability, 7 scored in the proficient range. 763 students were classified as academically disadvantaged, and 22%, or 168 student scores, fell in the proficient range. We recognize the results for the students with disabilities as an area of focus. The realignment of the leadership and the focus of providing more interdisciplinary opportunities are 2 examples how we've already taken action. And the approach to interdisciplinary approach will provide opportunities for repetitions of concepts and allow us to be very explicit in the connections for our students. This table shows the data from the cumulative data slide broken down by grade level. For grades 3 through 5, proficiency rate is about 20% for each grade. You will notice in grades 6 through 8, where students had uninterrupted foundational level instruction and prior testing experience, the proficiency rate increased to around 44%. In comparison, the percentage of Fulton City School District students proficient on the New York State 3 through 8 ELA assessment is on par with Oswego County, but 11% below that of the Central New York region. Our overall reading performance shows a decrease in proficiency percentage, but our students are showing slow, steady increase in their overall reading. Grade levels which seem most impacted by interrupted learning have lower proficiency rates, but are holding steady and starting to show improvements according to our fall tables benchmark. That suggests that our application of our letters and our science reading training has impacted and maintained and is helping us to start to recover the interrupted learning that has occurred.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I was struck by the 80% participation rate at 7th and 8th grade down in the 80s. Do we know why participation fell off so much?
So in those grade levels, I can answer that. It is often the decision of the student, and the family supports the decision of the student
Okay.
to opt out of those tests.
Thank you, 'cause that just jumped out at me.
And for adolescents, there tends to be some peer influence as well, we believe.
Okay, thank you.
I also have a quick question. For the Oswego County BOCES number, is that all the kids in Oswego County?
Correct.
So like Oswego City School District, Campbell Central School District.
All 9 school districts in Oswego County.
Okay.
Jerry, one more question since we're talking about county comparison. Do all districts in the county also give the screener, the fall screener and mid-year and the spring to their students as well as a separate data point?
So when you're talking about DILs,
Yeah,
For
or
county.
some other, whatever their locally decided screener is.
I don't want to speak specifically. I mean, as part of the Oswego County Literacy Initiative, we have all agreed that we will do that, and I think that we're at different levels of implementation. Would you say that's fair, Renee?
Yes, we just had our athlete advisory committee last week, and we were sharing our data from.
So they do all do that?
But we use DIBELS, some use AIMS, some use different ones. So we chose specific indicators. So we chose to do kindergarten, letter naming fluency, and then ORF for the rest. And right now, they're looking for a common norm and reference for our data, so we can compare those. So that's where we're at with the 9 districts.
Yeah, I just have a question. Okay, so do we, if I'm understanding this correctly, do we use DIBELS as a screener for K6 and then STAR for 7-12? Yes. And then, I don't know if I misunderstood. So on one of the slides, it said 7th grade, we were, for, I think it was ELA, was at 20% in the spring.
On
And
the
then,
timeline.
yep, and then over the summer, and that was at DIBELS at 20%. And then, so that would have had to be in 6th grade. And then fall, 7th grade, as a screener, they took the STAR exam. And proficiency went from 20% at DIBELS to 51%. Did I read that correctly?
It's 45% on the DIBELS in the spring of in the fall of 21, it was 45% on the DIBELS for our 6th grade students. And then it went to 56% on the STAR for the beginning of 7th grade. So beginning of 6th grade, 45% of students were at or above the beginning of 6th grade level. And then in 7th grade, 56% of students were at or above the beginning of 7th grade level in STAR.
Can you go back one slide on this, because I think
So
that,
where-
I think I need to have that.
Can you go
slide.
back again? Down.
Another one?
So on the, I think you're referring to the
The other way?
timeline.
There was a younger grade level that
That's
the baby, this,
So when they're in 4th
Yeah.
grade, the 20%?
if you go,
Oh, 4th grade, yeah.
So-
That's only 20% of the students tested,
4th
but
grade.
not all.
20% is tested.
After that, we decided it needed to be K6 versus, we were consistent with it implementing at K3. And we found that it really would be beneficial if you're implementing DIBELS K6, so we had a common universal screener that we could sort interventions by. And at that point, at the beginning of March, we were only testing a small portion of our students for DIBELS. So that's why that 20% is there, and then it jumps up to 50 when they're in 5th grade.
So in that fall the fall of 2019, the student population tested was 45 students total. And then in the fall of 20, it was over 200 students in that sample.
okay, that threw me off. Thank you.
It's good to understand the data.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Perfect, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. This evening, I'm going to be presenting the math and the science data. So very similar to the graphs that you just saw for ELA. This graph represents the cumulative data for grades 3 through 8 for those students who participated in our New York State math assessment. Overall proficiency at the end of last year, last spring when the students took this, was 21% in math, which is 268 students of our 1,274 students tested. Of the 215 students classified as students with disabilities, 7 scored in proficient range. 749 students were classified as economically disadvantaged, and 14%, or 105 students' scores fell in the proficient range. When comparing this data, actually, you can stay back on that slide, that first slide. When comparing this data to the ELA, there's some noteworthy points. Historically, our students have performed better on assessments in math than ELA, but that is now not the case. This change is the result of the focus on instruction and literacy. Gains have been made in ELA, not only increasing proficiency, but also the interventions targeting the least proficient students, and they have moved closer to proficiency. So, on the graph, you'll see that 79% of the students who were not proficient, 50% of those students scored a 1. And if you refer back to the ELA data, you'll see that they have a far significant more balance. They have balance between their 1s and 2s. So these targeted literacy programs have moved our 1s to 2s. And in math, we still are seeing a high number of 1s. So we still have some work to do to get those to 2s to move to 3s. So we're renewing our focus on math instruction. This year, a new intervention system assessing math concepts has been implemented as a Tier 3 intervention and should serve to move many of our lowest scoring math students closer to proficiency. Assessing math concepts, or AMC, you might hear it referred to, utilizes the best instructional practices in applying the science of learning math. AMC can be thought of as letters for math in the way that it uses the science of teaching and learning. We are also systematizing other interventions across grade levels to use data for small group formation and targeted instruction, along with utilizing other programmatic Tier 2 interventions. This table shows the data, the cumulative data broken down by grade level. For grades 3 through 5, the proficiency rate is very similar to that of ELA at about 20% for each grade. Additionally, as seen in ELA, grades with prior testing experience and uninterrupted foundational instruction tested better. So there is an increase in proficiency in grades 3 through 8. Please note that the 8th grade data, which does not include the students who are enrolled in our accelerated algebra. So we do see that drop right in 8th grade at that 13% because we do take those students off the top who are enrolled in algebra.
What percentage of our 8th graders are in the accelerated math?
There were 25 students last year.
Out of 250 in the
Like
class.
percentage wise, is that?
What is that?
It's
That's
about
8.
10%, about 10%.
So you can see where that's that dip right there.
Yeah, we had 100% pass rate, if you remember from our
Right.
business discussion
Yes.
at the last.
And it was a high proficiency in there. I don't remember the number. I presented that data, but I don't remember. So that's our math data.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
With our math scores being so low, and the fact that we probably need more bodies to go along with the new interventions, and is that a thought that we might implement maybe some math labs for some of our students who, I mean, it is quite substantially lower than the ELA scores.
So we did use some of our stimulus money to add math intervention positions in every building, except for the high school. So we do have math interventionists now.
How
In
many do we
addition
have in
to-
each building?
So there's 2 in every building.
Okay, and do we have a math lab or something here at the high school, or is there like?
Math labs are connected to the algebra courses and to the geometry courses.
And
So
do
it's
we
a
have-
double bill.
Do
of
we have
instruction.
students that are taking advantage of that? Or they-
It's scheduled for them. It is not an elective. It's part of their class, just like a science lab is scheduled with science class.
So if we have students who just want a little extra help, there's not something for them specifically. Like maybe they're not into that double lab, but you might have some struggling students who are doing a little better looking at the data, but they might still be struggling. Is there
Well,
something?
our struggling students are all pretty much scheduled for that.
Okay.
And then there's always the additional assistance that's provided during guidance study hall here at the high school with those academic support days and, staying time with teachers that they're, very willing to give review classes and other such things that provide that level of support at the secondary level.
Okay, thank you. Is guided study halls, is that the same time that you guys typically do the SEL learning?
So guided is divided over the course of the week. So there are days that are dedicated to academics and days that are dedicated to SEL.
Is it the same every
It's the
week?
same, yeah. it is.
How many days is SEL and how many days is academic?
I believe it's 2 and 3.
2 days
SEL
SEL?
and 2 days, or 3 days of academics. But I would have to go back and double check the schedule, because I'm doing that off the top of my head right now.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Okay, moving on to science. 366 students participated in the 4th and 8th grade science assessment last year. 63%, or 231 students, scored in the proficient range. 38% of our students classified as students with disabilities, and 55% of our economically disadvantaged students scored proficient. This table shows the science scores broken down by grade level. Scores between the 2 grade levels were relatively consistent. Please note that the 8th grade, our accelerated 8th grade taking our Earth Science class did not participate in the assessment. Our participation rate in 4th grade was 99%. Participation rate in 8th grade was 82%. As New York State transitions to the new learning standards in science, there will be a shift in the testing years. This coming spring, there will be no elementary science test in 4th grade. This assessment will shift to 5th grade starting next year. 8th grade intermediate science assessment will occur in the spring this year. This past summer, we invested in getting many teachers trained in the use of our Smithsonian science kits, which facilitate the core science curriculum and new standards. At Science Network Professional Developments, our teachers, coaches, and specialists are learning the best ways to get the most out of our science curriculum. This year, we will resume our planetarium and hovercraft experiences and continue with our rocket interdisciplinary. Those other 2 were limited during COVID, but we are bringing them back. They are on the books in the calendar. So we're excited about the science program this year. Any questions on science? Okay, turn it over to our elementary.
So now you're going to hear from our principal team regarding some building-specific action steps that they're taking around our student achievement.
Good evening. We spent a lot of time at our retreat this summer talking about communication, amongst many other things. The importance of communication, the importance of effective communication. We know that the #1 indicator of student success is support in the home. We know that this has the most impact on student achievement. We also know that this is one of the most challenging aspects that we struggle to control. And so one of the benefits, we talked about the pandemic, was it had a positive impact on communication with the home. Not only were students learning at home virtually, but their parents were learning with them. And we had a great responsibility to communicate with these families these new apps and tools that were used for virtual learning, as well as how to navigate them so they can help support their child. We gained a lot of momentum, and I feel like the gap between school and home for that period of time closed. And then over the last couple of years, we tried to maintain momentum with communicating with families. And one of the discussions that we had is consistency in all of our buildings. And that's where we started talking about one building, one district. We had some discussion on, is it 6 buildings, one district? But ultimately what it comes down to is one building. No matter what building you're in the Fulton City School District. And we want to create a smooth transition from all 4 elementary schools to the junior high, to the high school. And one of the most important ways that we can do that is communicating with our families. Not just communicating instruction or behavior, but communicating positive things that are happening in schools to make them exciting and to get them engaged in their child's learning. And as you know, as we get into 7th and 8th grade and then 9th through 12, that sort of engagement and that sort of participation from our families decreases. And so we really want to increase this K-12. This is a K-12 thing, not just a K-8 thing. And one of the ways we've done that is sharing our communications with each other. We share all of our family communications, our weekly communication to staff with one another so we can see how we're communicating and we can take some of the things. I know that I see these week aheads every week. I see Nate's every week. And it really informs my idea of what's happening within the entire district. We also have been using social media to connect with our families through a lot of positivity, showing them what's happening in the schools, making it relevant in their lives, showing them how engaging our schools are. But the positive communication through social media really helps reach a wider audience than just emails. As we know, a lot of parents, including myself, I'm guilty of it too, tend to see a long email and maybe skim or kind of move on. But these little bursts on Facebook, and I know we use Twitter, we use Instagram, are really helpful in showing parents things that are happening in the school, again, to invite them in. And the other thing that we've been doing to really streamline and make consistent our communication is we're using similar platforms. In most buildings, teachers use Remind. I know a lot of principals use Remind. A lot of buildings have moved to the SMORE newsletter for staff and for families. And we all use Blackboard to send communication. So we want parents, as they watch their child move from kindergarten all the way up through graduation, to really have a consistent, predictable experience that, again, is inviting them to join us through positive communication along many different mediums.
Me? That's right. Let's talk, Jeff and I are here to talk about the working teams because we have, although we're recommitting and continuing our commitment to our PLC questions, which are up there to just remind you of that commitment, we are changing the structure a little bit this year of our professional learning communities, and they're being known now as professional learning teams. So I know you've heard a little bit about that, but within that structure, we are taking some of that time, and I want to shout out our great building aides for helping us make these meetings possible. Some of those times are being switched up a little bit so that we can do what's called problem-solving teams. And what we're hoping to achieve from this is to make sure that we are catching every scholar that does need an intervention on their way from the classroom, their Tier 1 instruction, all the way through, if they need it, to get to the intervention team at the highest level for Tier 3 at the individual building. So what you'll see is that in some cases, Mark has been able to find even more time for those teams to meet. We are trying to capitalize, as you can see, by including coaches and support staff, including our restorative practice specialists, our school home liaisons, as well as our social emotional learning interventionists, which are really a key player this year in making sure that we have the whole child in mind while we're considering intervention. And we are using that MTSS model to problem solve in these meetings so that we are, again, considering that whole child while we're looking at what interventions are available and what we think might be successful moving forward.
So we came up as a team to do that. The pictures on top of this slide are purposeful. When we went to see the work of Rick and Becky before, and they talked about professional learning communities and building a professional learning community in your district, this was a pretty powerful image that they used when they said, most schools are set up as a race with a start and finish line like a marathon. How you run and where you run is determined by the course, but you don't rely on others, you don't rely on your team necessarily to get there. It's an individual drive. And a lot of schools are set up that way for their teachers to just drive from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. He said, to have a true professional learning community, you have to have interdependence of learning, where you have to rely on others to help you and you have to help others in order to get to your finish line. You need to think of school more like a crew team that's rowing toward a finish line, and you need each other to be successful. Where we've made a switch this year is what we've learned over the last few years is when we started this work, we looked at it building by building. I'm going to build teams in my building, Will's going to build teams in his building. What we've learned is, it really is to what Mark said, one district, one drive, where we're going to go, one school, one district, that idea. Our teams need to be interdependent with each other. So it doesn't matter, not only does it not matter which teacher you have in a building, it doesn't matter which teacher you have in any of our buildings. Your child's going to have the same opportunities and hopefully the same results. So the next slide kind of gets into this a little more deeply, what Will was talking about with the problem-solving teams. In the past, we've had this multi-tiered system of supports. Tim, I know you love acronyms, so the MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports, is the system that we put in place for our kids to support them all. The idea is that we will have all kids receive, that green triangle represents, doesn't matter what building you're in, you will receive the same instruction from the start wherever you are in Fulton. From there, where we've made some design changes this year really is looking at that problem-solving team, and that middle block switches from one big triangle that everyone is going to do to, at the building, we're looking at individuals. So we move from all to every. We look at every student, not just all students. And then within that every, we can find, looking at our DIBELS data, looking at our STAR data, where we have areas where students need skills that need reinforcement or reteaching, and we can use our resources to help that. We're trying to become more efficient with that across the district with our teams and with our interventionists. I know Brenda, you had asked about more math interventionists. So not just having more, but being more efficient in what we're doing and how we're doing it, being purposeful with the instruction that they're getting is really important, and that's where that middle tier, what we're focused on, is doing. For our students who aren't responding at that level, then you move over to that individual, and we have problem-solving teams where we have a group of people that is wrapping around a specific student to say, these are the things that we need to put in place, here's the plan for this student. So we kind of have all three layers of our multi-tiered system of support with our ability to respond when students aren't responding to the interventions or the instruction that they're getting.
And how long do you think it takes for the student that's struggling? So how long do you give it before you revisit? You put some interventions in place.
So there's a lot of research that says that really good instruction, a student can make up an extra half of a year. So if they're 2 years behind, you can think of 4 years of intervention. But within a year to see if a student is responding or not, it's typically 6 to 8 weeks. That's where we look. We put an intervention in place, we progress monitor to see if there's growth that's being made, and then we come back, or the teams come back and they say, okay, this student's responding, this student isn't, what do we need to do, how do we need to change? Do we need to give them more practice? Do we need, there are really 7 areas that we can look at adjusting to see if they need more, if they need different, what kind of things are adjusted there.
So do you think, from your experiences, do you think our parents understand that once we start with interventions that we're not likely to know how we're doing for 6 to 8 weeks? Because sometimes it's a frustration I hear from parents, and I think it's because they don't understand the processes.
I would have to agree with that, Robin. I'm sure that we can improve our communication in that area, just like we could with everything. And I will say to Jeff's point that it also, we're trying to get more individualized with interventions. So although we do, we do want to follow the research and maintain an intervention to see it through for around that 6-week period. If there is an individual scholar who does need a short-term intervention, we would do a review after 2 weeks and see if that intervention was successful based on the measures that we had agreed on at the beginning of the intervention. And then in that case, if it had been successful, we would communicate that with the parent as well. If not, then we might change the intervention. We may put something else in place. But again, we would work with the parents to decide what the next step would be as well.
It's very similar to looking at kids, whether or not they need an IEP. It's not an IEP, but it is
Right.
very personalized
Yes,
programming to meet their needs at that moment.
you got it.
Yeah. And it's a big deal, not everybody does it. So I like when you share with our parents because it's not common practice.
And I can't underscore the effect of having that time in the schedule. It's really important to have PLTs built into the master schedule at every building because not, as you all know, not every school in the county or the state or the country is committed to professional learning at that level. And in addition to our commitment to professional learning, we're also as equally committed to intervention for every student that needs it. And I think that our master schedules do reflect that.
One of the things that I want to underscore with what Jeff and Will just shared is that this process, we've really been pursuing this professional learning community framework for a number of years. Where we are coming back around and refining our practices is really looking at more prescriptively how do we utilize our teams in a variety of different ways. So we have a district, like for example, a 6th grade district level team. Every 6th grade teacher meets once a month or so in a rotation. So they focus on what are we teaching and how are we assessing. And then you go down to your building level team, which would be all of the 3rd grade teachers in a building. Well, then are looking at what does this grade level need in our building? How do we regroup students who have specific learning needs? Is this a matter of reteaching or pre-teaching specific skills that might be lagging? And then, even more prescriptively, how do we decide which students need those more specific and more intensive interventions that might go with a reading specialist or a math specialist in a small group, or might utilize a specific evidence-based intervention program for that need. And then those students who aren't responding, you might see them at that individual building level intervention team. But in between that grade level team and the building level, in our individual team, we've added a problem solving team. So the grade level can come together and say, these 5 kids I'm really struggling with. Nothing is that we've done as a grade level team is working. What additional expertise can we bring into this conversation, and how do we adjust our practices to meet the needs of that smaller group of kids? Not necessarily individualizing an intervention, but identifying commonalities in a smaller group of kids that we can address with a specific intervention. It does a couple of things, I think. It helps us be more diagnostic in how we're identifying student needs. It helps us be more prescriptive in how we're responding to student needs, but it also helps us be efficient with the resources that we have. So you're not taking a math teacher with a great deal of expertise of having them work with just one student at a time, but we're identifying commonalities across a grade level to help make the best use of the time that we have available, both on the student end, right, because they don't have a lot of extra time in their day either, and on the teacher end.
So how often do teachers come to you and say, I'm struggling with students?
So can I take that here?
Yes.
So we all have what's called a help form that is a Google form that we distribute and redistribute to our staff, so that if there is a scholar or a group of scholars that is not responding to our Tier 1 or Tier 1.5, in some cases, interventions from our curriculum, that they can get a hold of the student support team, put that kiddo or group of kiddos on our radar, and we can help them, just like Jerry was saying, in a problem-solving team meeting, address some of their concerns, maybe put a plan into place, and then progress monitor based on what we've decided at that meeting. And again, Robin, to your point, we communicate that with guardians guardians at home as well. And then, if we aren't successful in that, we take the next step from that help form, which is the student will, most likely end up on our agenda, or at least potentially on the agenda for the school-based intervention team.
Now, how often are we, I guess I'm struggling with this because, I'm glad that everyone agrees that these scores are low, because I was baffled by them, to be honest with you. I was very shocked. And I went back and I looked at prior years' assessments, and I was like, they've been low. Like, we've been consistently low. Our district is consistently low in the county. We're consistently low with the state. And this is concerning to me. So I look at what you guys are saying. And so, we're looking at the classroom, then we're looking at these kids, but they're not proficient, because when they're moving to the next grade, they're still not proficient. And whether we're putting interventions in place or not, I feel truly that we're pushing kids through that aren't necessarily ready to be put through to the next level, and they're falling further behind, and that's why some of our percentages are still low, because those kids aren't truly getting the help that they need. And I don't think that getting interventions for kids here is easy. I think that if the parent doesn't fight for it, it's very difficult for a kid to, first of all, those kids sometimes don't even know that they're struggling or behind. But I feel like it's hard to get these special circumstances. And I know that we're not supposed to group our kids, and we're not supposed to, whatever the word I'm looking for is, but track them. But we're not helping them if we're not doing something similar to that. And, I feel like our kids, when you said one of the concerns with parents was that our kids aren't ready for life after high school, I 100% feel that. I'm very scared for my kids coming through, that they're not gonna be ready. I'm really, really struggling with this in our numbers. And, I feel like part of this is going back to, and I don't wanna place the blame on anyone, and I don't wanna say that anyone's doing a bad job or anything like that. I'm just coming from the parent side of this, and I'm seeing that, we have 14 to 20 instructional coaches. We're taking amazing classroom teachers, and we're just promoting them out of the classroom. And I understand the premise behind the instructional coach, but I don't see the benefit of it right now. And I think that we need more people in the classroom. We need more kids going to reading classes, going to math classes, and I'm sorry, I don't see it happening. And it's really a struggle for me, and I know that everyone has good intentions. It's hard, and you're looking at Oswego County, and I get that, it's a lower, our socioeconomic aspects and stuff, but, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I'm just bringing it up from an outside perspective, things that have been said that are just resonating with me, and those are where I find issues with this, I guess.
So I guess I'll start, ooh, I'm not on.
And you're still not.
I'm still not on. I might be dead.
You have to show. You want mine? You're welcome.
I guess I'll start by agreeing that the results are not what any of us want to see or where we want them to be. We have 8 instructional coaches, and I think Mrs. Stoddard will get into in a moment where we're seeing the value of that and how that's impacting, because she's going to talk to us about our instructional priorities. But going back to the intervention piece, I think one of the other things that we can do a better job at is communicating to families what interventions actually are, because I think that we get stuck in thinking that they are a pull-out class, where someone is coming out of a classroom and going to a reading specialist. Where the power is in this professional learning team and professional community model is that we develop expertise within the teachers themselves. They share what's working among their teammates who teach common subjects. So where we get to in a professional learning team conversation where our goals are, we're not always there yet, and we're not there consistently in every team, but that's part of the development, is that you're having a conversation on third grade, just comes to mind randomly, that we agreed that this is what we were going to teach in this time period. We agreed that this was the assessment that we were going to give to determine how well we taught it, how well our students learned it. And we're going to be able to be safe and comfortable enough, and that goes back to our belonging, safety, and purpose, vision, that I can say to you, Mrs. Adler, your kids did a really good job on this. They performed well. They've mastered this essential learning outcome. Mine did not. How did you teach this? How did you go about instructing and supporting your students in mastering this particular learning outcome? And if we can get there and share that common expertise, that's the goal of the professional learning team. Intervention doesn't need to be pulled out. Intervention can be me as a classroom teacher saying, you know what, I've noticed that this is not going well. I'm going to take this small group during center time and I'm going to reteach this concept, or I'm going to focus on this particular foundational skill that's the barrier to these kids excelling. And I do think that as we have learned to do better, we are doing better. So we'll go back to the science of reading, for example. Some of the things that we're seeing in our high school students and where they are struggling, we can trace back to some language development, some of the vocabulary development that we thought we were doing the best at the time, and we were. We were doing the best with what we knew for instructional practices. And now we have learned that there are additional ways that we can approach those foundational skills. The same holds true in math. And we're going to get to a place where we're looking at that in the same way as Abby mentioned around the science of reading. How do kids learn the foundational math concepts? And so I'm encouraged by the growth that we're seeing at that primary level and the impact that we're having, because that will build that foundation as we continue to go forward. I think the basic message is we need to continue to evolve those effective practices, and we need to communicate that getting help doesn't mean that you're going to an AIS teacher. Getting help doesn't mean that you have to have an IEP or a 504 plan. It means that we're recognizing, based on our essential learning outcomes that we expect, and the assessments that we're given that should reflect those outcomes. Here's where we're going to re-practice. Here's where we're going to pre-teach. Here's where we're going to do small group intervention within the classroom. And get those specialists on for kids who still need that extra help. So, scores are not where we want them to be, and the strategies that you're hearing, we do believe are effectively designed to get us closer to that. It's going to take us some time to get there. And there's also an urgency though. So, you can't, just because it's going to take time doesn't mean it's not urgent. We have to make sure that we're responding effectively to each one of our students and opening the dialogue with parents.
How are our teachers feeling? Is there feedback that you're getting from our teachers that they feel that they have this help and extra support? Because yes, you're right, we're not always pulling students up to send them to a specific AIS instruction. But they're overwhelmed. I'm hearing from they're overwhelmed because it's not just one, we can clearly see by the percentages, it's not just one or two who need that retaught, reteach. And some of them are not feeling that the help forms are getting answered timely enough fashion for them. There's frustration through the district. And I mean, not that you can fix that overnight, but when you have, what do we have, 20-something students in a class, and we know that the numbers are high for the interventions that they need. I like the concept that they can go to each other, did we call it PLC teams? PLTs, yeah.
PLTs, so that they can, help each other, but are they getting there? Because we also know that there's the behavioral issues that are in the classroom. So that kind of sidebars all the things that we're trying to do to get our students to where they need so that they can move on.
So this for both Brenda and Jessica. This slide seems pretty simple. The intentionality of that middle part is a really big change for our district. When we used to put the pyramid up, it was one triangle that showed 80% of the kids in green and 50% in yellow and 5% in red. The middle part of that has individual pyramids because we know that students all have their own individual what I'm strong at and what I'm not. With that being said, the teachers and the teams responding, kind of what you're saying, Brenda, if you were to take, if all of our classrooms, like I have 21 classrooms at Manning, if all of them fill out a help form for 3 kids, I now have 63 kids that are going to need intervention in the old model. There are, if we're lucky, there are 40 weeks of school. We usually meet on 1 student per week with an hour-long intervention team meeting. So just the numbers right there, we're unable to do it. So we said this isn't efficient. Carlo Cuccaro, who's a school psychologist working on our multi-tiered system of supports and what we're doing, always said, it's like going through the toll booth in the thruway. 1 car at a time was really slow. Now that they took it out and made it so that you just drive through, it's way more efficient. We're looking for a model where we could still meet the needs of our students as groups and as teams and still empower the teachers to be able to do that. The help form is still there. We're trying to send our student support teams to support in that area, and students who are not responding are still coming up at intervention teams. We're already holding the meetings. We're meeting and discussing those kids that aren't responding. The other thing is it's empowering our teachers, but it's also, we're all working on goal setting for our kids. So early on, the kids know, we kind of mentioned this, whether it's an IEP or whether it's, if they don't know that they're struggling, they're not going to know they need to work. Being prescriptive and making sure the kids know and can set goals is another part of that. Getting the parents involved, getting the students involved, making sure the teachers are empowered to help building that system is something we're constantly doing. Because if our data said 95% of our kids were proficient, it also says 5% aren't. That's our job. Whether it's 5% or 50%, we have to respond and make our adjustments to do better. And that's kind of what we're looking at. We knew we were going to get kicked with the results this year, and they have historically done that. But we also see that we're making some growth and we're putting some things in place that our kids are really responding to. And we don't make decisions without looking at the research and finding data to support it. It's not, I think my gut feeling says we found something that's proven that helps our kids and our teachers be able to do a better job.
Jerry, is it fair to say that the assessment data we're looking at is state assessment data and that the rigor increases test to test, year to year? So it's kind of a moving target. And I've been in the place of parents with my kids going through the system where they were thrown into Common Core, and I thought we were never going to. I thought they were never going to graduate. So I kind of see that angst. I appreciate that. But I think as a parent on the other side of it now, I found that the district did very well preparing our students. By the time they hit the secondary and they're sitting for Regents exams, I felt like my anxiety decompressed as a parent because they really did perform. So way back when I thought they were not where I thought they should be, where as a parent you want your kid to be, I realized that rigor was increasing and the target was moving, and in the end, I found that they were prepared to succeed through high school, and they did. So I hope that's the same. I know we're dealing with a different situation with the pandemic, and not to cast that aside, but I think that's obviously a challenge, but for what it's worth, just as one parent.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, and Brenda, you referenced this, the social and behavioral needs that we're seeing in our youngest children in particular are taking a lot of time and energy and effort on behalf of our student support teams and our principals and our classroom teachers, right, who are with them 7 hours a day. So that is we are trying to be very strategic about the data in that area as well. So all of the decisions come back to what do we see in the data. And it's not just assessment data, it is observational data, it is behavior intervention plan data, it is common assessment data, it is exit tickets, like 2 questions at the end of a lesson. So there are a lot of data points that we're using to really be intentional and be timely in our response, so that we're not waiting 5 weeks, right, after we've taught something to come back and say, these kids just didn't grasp this particular concept, and how do we help them? These are all practices that we have had in place, but the refinement of them and being really, really like laser focused on some of these is new. And we're renewing, resetting sort of after the pandemic, the things that we readjusted to accommodate remote learning and just the pandemic and that modes of instruction that we were faced with over the last years. Have helped us get better at certain things like collaboration, but we have to go back to some of the things that we knew before and renew our commitment to some of them as well. So that's what we're seeing. Our teachers are doing an amazing job at making those adjustments. And, you know, you asked how are our teachers feeling. I think for the most part, the systems, they value the collaboration. And we hear that consistently, that they need this time to really work on that. And based on the number of teachers who are attending professional development opportunities in the summer, and you know, other times before and after school, they are really embracing their own new learning to better help the students.
And I just want to bring up one point, and I shared this when I made this discovery, but I had a while ago, about a 12-year-old, talking to me about the point of the tests that we give. We did whatever it is. They're pointless, they're boring, why do you make us do them? All kinds of distaste for being tested. And the following year, that same student was bothered because they didn't get in some advanced classes when they entered the junior high, and said, well, geez, why didn't that happen? You know, I'm smart, I get good grades. I said, well, you know, those tests you were complaining about, how much effort did you put into those? Well, what do you mean? Very seriously, what do you mean? Well, did you take them serious? No, nobody takes them serious. Didn't try at all. Admitted to me, I did not even try, because they're pointless, they're boring, and I see no reason to do it. At the end of that year, the student came back around to me and said, guess what, I did my very best, we'll see what happens. We're gonna see if you know what you're talking about to me. They got into advanced classes. I'm just saying, and I asked how pervasive they thought this was amongst the peers that they interacted with, and said, well, yeah, none of us take, because it always seems stupid. Nobody told me that I really needed to look at these for that reason. I'm just saying, so I factor a little bit of that into all of these tests, because there are kids that go to school and just don't put the effort forth, and some of that goes to the moms and the dads that say, we want you to, not every kid has somebody saying to them, you know, do your best today, you know, don't get nervous about it, just go do your best, have a good day. Not everybody's getting that kind of feedback before they go in to do that. And I know the teachers try, but I think the bigger impact is at home and not at school about do your best on your test. I mean, that's my opinion, raising, you know, a few kids and watching my grandkids. And I ask my grandkids all the time, and they're in different school districts, how important, they just for some reason resent being tested. And it really goes in large part to not understanding that there is value to them to do well.
I'm hearing a lot of commonality in our discussion having to do with communication and time.
Yeah.
Okay? And being in education for quite a while, I feel like we reinvent the wheel and some of the same problems occur time and time again. Over 50% of our students are just not proficient, period. And that is definitely a concern.
Mm-hmm.
What I haven't found or seen is a lot of emphasis being placed on common assessments, giving teachers time to collaborate and having that common assessment so we know as a grade level, as a department, as a subject, what we are teaching it at the same time, we are teaching it together, and we are assessing in a common way to figure out what is working and what is not, and then using that information. We haven't had enough time yet to see if that is going to work.
It's true.
Data and research shows that it does work, and I don't see why it wouldn't, right? But we haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
So, what can we do now? We need to communicate to parents our goal. When I'm hearing that my child, my personal, one of my kids is a level 1 and 2, and I'm looking at what she is doing in school, I'm an educator, I should know this stuff, right? I should know what she's doing. I'm involved in her academics, I don't know. She does not know. She knows that she's in an RTI class, but she doesn't know why. She doesn't know how she got there, and she doesn't know what she has to do to get out. So that's the communication piece.
And I think that's right, what we heard tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's the disconnect. It's not that we're not trying to do the right thing, but the kids don't know why. And you know what? The teachers don't have time to tell them because we don't have enough help. These teachers don't have enough support in their classrooms to get it done. They don't have enough time to explain why they're there and how they're going to get out. They just have to do it. They don't have enough time and support to say, this group of kids, I need to make sure that this is retaught with this group. Who's going to teach it and when? We don't have that time. So there's the disconnect. It's communication and it's time. The kids don't know it. The teachers don't have time to do it. We're giving them time to discuss it and make sure the common assessments are happening, and that is all absolutely fantastic. But they don't know why they're there. They don't know how to get out. And how do we communicate that to parents? All parents are seeing is, and all I'm seeing is, you're testing again? That stupid STAR test? I have no idea what that test means. I wouldn't take it seriously either. They don't know what's on the test.
I do believe
Right?
it's part of
So they don't know why they're taking it. The teachers hate it. They're like, no, I don't want to take it. I don't understand either. But they take it, and sure enough, you're either okay and you're in class and going through the motions, or you're in that RTI class and you don't know why. So it's communication, it's time, and it's support. So what are we going to do to make sure that these teachers have the support? Because I'm hearing it also. They don't have the bodies. We don't have the bodies. It's not just a Fulton issue. It's a national issue.
It is. I mean,
We don't have enough time. We don't have enough money. So what are we going to do about it? To get them support. We have a great foundation.
Yeah.
We have a great goal. We have the steps in order to take it. But we can't get there unless these teachers have help, period. So do I know the answer? Nope, that's not in my pay grade. Brian? But I mean, we're on the right track, but we don't, parents are frustrated because they see test, and why, I don't know why. They certainly don't know why.
And to be fair, the district over the years has communicated about Dibbles and Star. But we communicate a lot of things, and I'm fairly certain, based on some of the people I know, it doesn't get read. So they still don't know, because you can send all the material, but if they don't consume it and ask questions,
I wonder, in terms of communication, is it possible to kind of do a video, informative video for parents and put it on the website?
I don't know what the answer is, but.
I mean, I just think that, I will be the first to say that when all of that comes home in the mail, it depends if you're able to attend to it and how much can you attend to it before you have to move on to the other parents.
And that's what I hear, Dave, that's a fair, I mean, I hear that overwhelmingly.
And you have to remember that those STAR tests and those dibbles are just a snapshot of that day.
Yep.
So how does that fit into the data that we're seeing with what they're actually doing in the classroom? As far as for them to be able to get out, or, because, I mean, if your kid is just having a really bad day or they don't feel good, they're not gonna, or for instance, I had a child It didn't matter how many tests you gave him in math, he had it in his head that it wasn't good, he couldn't do it, therefore, he didn't take it serious, because it was hard. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I
go,
think some of it goes back to what Brenda's saying, it's a snapshot. And again, these snapshots, I don't think are the be-all, end-all about how our kids are going to do. I had one that I didn't think would survive life based on, tests. And the truth of the matter is doing extremely well in life.
Right, and who's the most important person to understand that? The student.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that they just don't.
Right.
I mean, maybe my kids are different, but they have no idea. They don't know.
I think that goes back to your conversation about communication. I do think some students are aware and I think others are not aware. And so how are we very explicit? That goes back to those essential learning outcomes, the learning targets that should be embedded in all of our instruction. That's the indicator right there. By the end of this lesson, by the end of this unit, I can, whatever, fill in the blank. I can analyze text and make comparisons.
I have a grandchild that got those, and that's how it was delivered to him where he attends school.
Right.
And he knew, and he would tell, I could call him and say, what are you doing? And he would tell me, this is what I'm doing, and this is what we're gonna be doing for X number of days or weeks, and I'm gonna know this at the end.
I know that it's helpful, I'm understanding what you're saying, when I get a 5-week report, or if I get a report card home, and it says something specific to me, your child is struggling in addition, you know what I mean? Okay, now I know. If you say standard 1 and 3, I'm like, I know for my subject area, but I don't know what that is. So maybe put it on the 5-week reports and report cards. I don't know the answer, but maybe just more specific for communication to parents when they, get something home in the mail. I mean, it would help me.
Or something easier for them to understand.
Yes, so we're going to come back around to that essential learning outcomes communication that is so important along with the assessment piece of that. But I think that some of these practices that we really want to focus in on, Mrs. Stoddard is going to talk to us about, because you're mentioning a lot of the things that are bringing us next to our instructional priorities.
Yes, this conversation was an
It's very
excellent
important.
segue into our instructional priorities. The next slide. So we started our instructional priority work about 10 to 12 years ago, where we wanted to find, just as they're titled, priorities for our instructional practices in the district. The uniqueness to these is that they are practices that are applicable to pre-K through 12 across all grades and all content areas. So we looked at research-based, evidence-based practices that we would like to see in every classroom in our district, that we know that would support all students and would foster engagement. This work was embedded into our strategic coherence plan, and we spent a lot of time and collaboration around these strategies. So this past summer, as an instructional team, we dug back into these priorities, and it was really empowering and exciting to see that as we reviewed with the entire instructional leadership team, we didn't want to change any because they were based on Marzano's work and Hattie's work, evidence research-based practices that we knew were great for kids and we would love to see in any classroom that we walked into. So with that, and bring encouragement of how important these are, we set our vision for the school year, and that's the 3 bullets in the box at the bottom. So the first is that instructional priorities will be a regular focus. On a leadership level, we bring these up every Friday morning during our PLT, our administrative PLT, and these are always a topic that we're continuing to talk about what we see and how we're leading this in our buildings. Over the summer, we had a lot of discussion on how we're weaving these into all components of the day. So when we look at those teams that were just referred to by Jeff and Will, those PLTs, how are we interweaving these instructional priorities into our practice? We know this is good teaching. It's not tied to an initiative, it's not tied to curriculum, it's tied to great practice. So as we kind of revisit our PLTs and we get to look at those 4 questions, we want to make sure that teachers understand that there are kind of simple and universal ways that we can practice to become better at our craft. So that kind of leads us to the second bullet of unpacking the priorities and building a common understanding. Like I said, we started this work 10 to 12 years ago, so we have a lot of new staff and leadership. So we really hit the reset button, and we've been spending, all 6 buildings have already done some work in their faculty meetings and within their PLTs of just taking a look at those 7 priorities. What do they mean? What's the why behind them? What do they look and sound like in the classroom? There's been some pictures on the website that you can see of some of the faculty meetings that have happened and some of the small group meetings, and we've been really encouraged by the vertical discussion that's been happening and just the empowerment of teachers to collaborate and share their craft. So the last bullet is that everyone will practice and receive feedback around the priorities. This is a work in progress. This will happen throughout the year. Again, this was a vision for all leaders, but we're going to do it a little bit differently in each building. But every teacher will have an opportunity to get into other teachers' classrooms. So something that we heard is, yes, professional development is great, and speakers that we bring in are powerful. But being able to go in and observe our own peers and get into a classroom is possibly more powerful. And we need to learn from each other and see great things, but also receive feedback. So we're differentiating that strategy within our building. Some teachers are more ready and prepared to get out and be in classrooms, and vice versa, invite people in, and others are not. So that's something that our school improvement teams are looking at differentiating and how we support those teachers in that way. And then going back to the instructional coach piece, this has been huge for them, because this has really reset their purpose and their focus. So along with working with priorities, teachers are setting their own goals. Every teacher is looking at priorities, determining where they need support, and coaches are coming in to support. So it's been really nice that we've done coaching cycles and we've used them for different capacities in different ways, and this year, this has really centered their work. So when they're having conversations with them, they can come back to these common 7 instructional practices that we can embed into all of our instruction.
Remind me how many coaches are in each building? Because you said we have 8, so we have two
So-
for elementary,
Yes, we have 2 coaches that are assigned to building pairs. So 2 on the west side and 2 on the east side,
Okay,
right? So they're K2 coach and 3-6 coach.
okay.
One is a STEAM focus, one is a literacy focus, and that way we have complementary pairs on either side. So when it comes to the district level work, you'll have a K2 STEAM and a 3-6 STEAM, and a K2 literacy humanities and a 3-6 humanities. But on each side of the river, you have a K2 coach and a 3-6 coach. So they have more time, I think, to spend with their principals, and the principals as teams. And they're not going to 4 buildings like they had been in the past at the elementary level.
And so the 2 are not in this building at the same time, so the STEAM might be in,
Well, they could be.
oh, okay.
If they have a
Very
schedule,
fluid
but
model based on teacher need.
if
So
you have
some of our buildings that have maybe some more struggling teachers or newer teachers, they might spend some more time on, but they are very responsive to student or to teacher needs.
Okay.
And then we have 2 at the middle level who are also interdisciplinary specialists, so their entire time isn't coaching. So they're at the 7th and 8th grade level, but they're also supporting K-8 interdisciplinary work.
Okay.
And then we have 2 at the high school who are coaching, and we have someone who was assigned to our elective area and special area teacher teams too. So that's a K-12 assignment.
So is that 11?
That is actually 9, but really they're interdisciplinary specialists.
9 total.
9 total,
Specialists.
yes. Coaches and specialists
Coaches.
combined.
And specialists.
9 assignments.
9 instructional coaches.
Correct.
9 instructional coaches. Okay, here's just a quick question that I have, and community members have asked me, and I don't know the answer to this. You have 9 instructional coaches, full-time. And I'm not saying that they are not doing what they're supposed to do, and I'm not saying that they are not helpful. Question is, could the 9 instructional coaches maybe be half-day positions and then push in to classrooms for that extra small group work needed for the, I don't know the lingo that I'm supposed to be using, for the interventions that these students obviously need. Is that something that has been discussed, and do you think that it could become a reality? Because it's needed. Some people think.
We just changed our coaching model this year to go to this particular model. So the support that they are doing, 80% of their time has to be directly with teachers. So they're already in classrooms and supporting teachers in the classroom, not necessarily providing student intervention, but supporting teachers in those practices. So we would really have to look at the allocation of time across all of our assignments, because in our elementary schedules, for example, there is intervention time designated. Our principals have done an amazing job of allocating their staff to be present during that time. So if a grade level has an intervention time, then you have your reading and math specialists available, your special education teachers available, your teaching assistants available. So they're able to break down their support into small group during that time, because the time is common across the grade level, and they can make staff schedules to push the support into that time frame.
And that would be the PLTs meetings? Or is that in addition to?
That is intervention time.
So that's in addition to the PLT time that is already built into the schedule to talk about and to learn from each other to do the common assessments.
Correct. So PLT time at the elementary level is an hour a week. That's grade level specific. It's at the beginning or end of the day. And our aides and other hands on deck are supporting classrooms during that time. So teachers at 6th grade are collaborating at the same time every week on a predictable schedule. Every grade level at the elementary. Then in the elementary student day, there is intervention time built into every grade level schedule. That's common intervention time for that grade level. So you'll have an intervention block for ELA and an intervention block for math, where, again, based on the building principal's mastery of the schedule, you're having all hands on deck to do small group interventions in that time.
And I'm hearing the importance that you're stressing in interventions, but there is no replacement for quality tier 1 instruction. We'll never intervene our way out of quality tier 1 instruction. And our coaches, they do absolutely support and coach through interventions like Spire and Legal 80. They spend a lot of their time during tier 1. So when I see my coach, I almost never see her in her coach's office. I see her co-teaching with another teacher. I see her modeling what the teacher's watching. And then, maybe they'll co-teach the next time she's observing and giving feedback. So they are in classrooms, but their goal is really to focus on tier 1 so that we can, maybe we need to provide less tier 2 and tier 3.
Okay. I'm understanding. Okay.
They're trying to go upstream to figure out why they're falling.
This is a lot of information. I gotta digest it. I have to digest it. I'm taking notes.
I mean, it's a great deal of work that's going on here,
Well,
in the district. And
you don't
I
really
think that's
understand exactly what goes into each position unless you're in it.
Right, and even for us though, to be because people are asking you, to be fair, you just need to direct them to the people that do it every day. We are not, that's not our role. And it's good that we're asking questions and we're trying to understand what's going on. But our role is not to figure out how to get it done. Our role is to make sure they have the resources to get it done and to ask, and to find out how we're doing it.
So, right, and so my question to you
Yeah.
just would be this. our goal, our job is to help provide resources. So when somebody asks a question, what are these instructional, what are our instructional coaches doing throughout the day? Are they providing what's necessary for our students? I say, I'm not sure. Could you please?
You could say that if you're not sure, because to be quite, you could say, this is what
I would like to know.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that, with knowing.
Right.
But all I'm saying is I don't feel like you're obligated to have an answer every time, because that's not our role. And to want to know for your own understanding, because there's a lot of that goes into our budgeting. So there's value for us. But it's not something we focus on all the time in our board meetings, which is the only time we really get together.
Right.
So we direct them to the appropriate, either the building principals that could help them understand what's happening or not happening. And again, going back to trying to figure out the communication piece. How can we broaden and give people the knowledge they need? They certainly don't want what we just discussed here tonight, because we spent way more time than any parent's going to give to understand this. So that's the tricky part, is coming up with those bites of information that they can absorb and help them to understand. But the really best answer is to send them back to the teacher or the principal with regard to their particular child, because they know what's going on with their child.
And I just want to reiterate, the point that Liz made. The better we get at tier 1, which is the purpose of coaches, the fewer students should need intervention.
That was very, very powerful,
Yeah.
the way that you said that. It makes sense, for sure. Yeah.
So I say to people, we're doing a lot of things are in the works, and we're not there yet. We're not perfect, and we're never going to be perfect. Let's face it, because our kids change over time. Technology changes over time. It changes how we all behave. We've seen that, or I've been around long enough to see that. And so it's constant, it's fluid, and it's always going to be changing, and education changes, and it's cyclical. And I've been around a long time to see things that didn't work. It was the latest and greatest. Let's talk about whole language. Oh my God, I thought I was going to lose my mind as a parent living through whole language.
Right, and to your point, when it comes up on budget, like, if I don't understand it,
right,
I don't feel like
so I
I
think it's
have
great
enough knowledge to.
if you're asking.
Right.
So the questions are good. I'm just saying, I heard you say that part about the community, and you're not obligated to have a Johnny on the spot answer.
Yes, okay,
Jenny, you mentioned, we need to help our teachers.
yeah.
As a principal, I tend to want to follow our days, and I don't get to help my teachers anywhere near as much as I would like to. Our coaches are helping our teachers. So when they bring up conversations during a PLC meeting, I need to do something differently, I just don't know how. Yes, they can come to me, but the reality is, a lot of them go to their instructional coach, need help. They're more vulnerable to go to a coach to get help, to have someone come in and observe them and get feedback. Our coaches have been super powerful in providing help to teachers when maybe a building principal can't reach all 75 staff. That's their focus for their work.
And it's safe. That was one of the things we talked about when we started with coaches. It's safe because it's non-judgmental. So I'm not saying principals are judgmental, but sometimes they can be seen that way because they're doing the evaluation. Yes.
Right.
That's what sold me on doing it in the first place, so I want to share it for that reason, because it is different.
I just know for me, they're like another limb. If they help me lead instructionally all day, every day. When I'm, preparing for a state test or sitting in the office with a parent with a struggling student, I have someone that's keeping the pulse on my building that I can connect with. And we can see patterns of how to support teachers and what's going on instructionally. They're in and out of classrooms all day, every day. Usually because they're helping teachers, but also they're just another pulse on the building.
I would say the same thing. I meet with my coaches every week. They help me plan faculty meetings because they have a better beat on the building sometimes than I do. They know things that teachers wouldn't tell me because they may be intimidated to do so. They'll tell the coaches tell me, and it really kind of guides my focus on what areas I need to provide resources and who I need to provide more support to. Mine have been invaluable in the last year or two with helping run this building instructionally and leading instructionally. instruction and knowing what my teachers need.
The model is very deliberate. We've looked at that. Again, one district, one building, all of us working together, the coaches being in multiple buildings, us relying on each other and our coaches to get a lens to see the world bigger than ours and to look at that whole picture of what we're doing. All really important things. And, you know, Jess, I think or Jen, one of you said it, we're taking great teachers out. That's purposeful too, because we want people who have the experience and our instructional leaders to help show and promote some of that. People who are willing to learn themselves and promote that in others. So it is something that's a tricky balance, because when you pull someone out of the classroom, you're taking a great resource for those 25 kids. But if they impact 800 kids, 500 kids, 200 kids, that their scope gets a little bigger and maybe a little bit more long-lasting. That's the whole.
I understand that completely, and just like you were saying, Jeff, you have to find that balance, because then, playing devil's advocate, should teachers have that already? Should we spend time on our professional development days, or after school when we don't have students? I don't know what ours is, like 2:30 to 3:05, when we don't have students. Should we spend our time when we don't have students becoming better at our craft, and during the school day, in those crucial, 6 hours when we have students, only focus on them? Just playing devil's advocate, I don't have the answer to
I
that.
would say the answer to that is yes, but just like students, adults don't learn from a one-day PD shot. They need that guided coaching
Correct.
and instruction.
I understand that as well, but
So
I'm
yes,
just,
both.
the devil, right, both, right, we just, that balance, we'd be millionaires if we had the.
I'd also
answer
want to
to
point
that.
out, though, that we are one of few districts whose teacher day matches their student day. We have students for 7 hours.
Yeah. We have the longest school day in
We
the
have a
region.
longest school day in the
Most-
region
yeah.
of student direct exposure to instruction.
There's a range of 5.5, which is the basic minimum, 5 or 5.5, depending on if you're elementary or secondary, to all the way to the 7 hours. We did a study, actually, I believe Mr. Greer was a part of that, and we actually looked at the length of school day. We have the longest school day, one of, if not the longest school day in the entire region. We go from 7:30 to 2:30, 7:35 to 2:35. Our teacher day is 7:35 to 2:35, for example, for secondary. So, same thing with our elementary. They come rolling in at 8:30. We want to get them rolling by 8:40, 8:45. And then we go all the way till 3:10, 3:15, and we release at 3:20 with a dismissal at 3:30 clear. So, I mean, I think, when we talk about that, we're really trying to maximize the opportunities throughout the course of the day.
Yeah.
And I think, having seen kind of what happens with coaching, there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and all the pieces are what makes the picture. And, you can't have one without the other pieces. We have to strengthen Tier 1 instruction, and Liz was head on, dead right, with that. 100%, if all of our kids get the 100% best quality instruction, we will have less and less kids that need secondary or Tier 2 level interventions and Tier 3 interventions. I think the biggest challenge, for me as I listen this evening, and I always hear that, is constantly, we talk about goals and objectives and coaches for our staff and administrators, because we're doing a lot of that work. But how do we actively involve kids in their learning? And, I think that's something that's one of the largest challenges that we have. There are different strategies to be able to do some of those things. And once they get hooked and kids start to experience that, parents need to experience that as well. And maybe we don't do enough of, look at the progress that your child did make. We don't maybe necessarily, talk about that enough to say, Brian went from X amount here, here's where he was in September, and here he is in January, and darn, you know what, he just did a 50% increase.
Right.
That's really important for us to recognize, because it feels good to be able to do that. And I think that's important for staff to hear and see, because they're working so hard, with our kids, and our kids are working hard. So I think, and parents need to be a part of that loop, and how do we get everybody in the same piece? And that's the part that, is the key to this. We got all the foundational pieces. Now we have to take those pieces and make it a beautiful picture for every child, every day. And that's, not all, every. child every day.
So not to be a Debbie Downer here, but I'm wondering if you want to proceed with this report.
Yep, no,
It's been a great conversation, but we've talked about it
Enough?
quite long.
Mrs. Hendrickson will share with us, she's filling in for Mrs. Salerno for this particular part of the presentation. So thank you, Renee, for taking this one.
Sure, I thought you were going to adjust some of the things that I would have normally said based on our conversations. I think I might be able to fill in some gaps that I've heard throughout. Gina was preparing, prior to COVID, we are pretty much in line with meeting our strategic coherence goals here. And right now, we've really stayed true to that, providing opportunities for every student to stay and some PD. So going back to what you were referring to with our coaches, in that time before or after school, I can say now that our coaches are spending a lot of time before school, during teachers' lunches and planning time, and afterwards discussing ways to, saying that when we went through letters was when we know better, we do better. So looking at our CKLA, ELA programs and pulling our letters manual out and where can we embed these great strategies in our manuals. And also taking that time, really analyzing interventions and the data. So you talked about making sure all students are getting interventions. Right now, we're building systems and structures where we're looking at data, all students in our grade level, and we're making sure that all students are in some type of intervention, whether it be to fill in gaps or to go deeper with the standards for our high. So during that wait time that the principals are referring to in their master schedule, all students are in some sort of intervention, so no one's getting lost. And we're spending a lot of time now talking about how can we ensure that when our students are in 3rd and 4th grade, that there aren't any gaps. So we're talking about implementing different programs that can solidify that decoding and encoding. So when they get to 5th and 6th, we can go deeper with comprehension and have those opportunities during the day. So we're working on those systems that we're building. And all of that, again, is based on the science of reading that we're continuing to connect to and focus on. And my hope is, with student-led conferences, really switching that ownership to students to having them know what they're working on and why. And that not only being in their tier 1, but if they're in intervention, why are you here? And what's the purpose? And what are you going to attain to move forward? So, and we're coming back to that ownership piece is my hope. So I think, again, when we talked about the restructuring of the leadership, Abby and I's focus is really about building those systems pre-K to 12 and having the thread that's important all the way through really articulated and focused. That will cover the next slide. So now we'll district action steps.
So I want to thank you for the rich conversation that just occurred. You demonstrated so much of what we're doing here at the district level within your conversation. I also want to just say that the building leaders that were just up here presenting, their action steps really make sense, and they're going to build a wonderful foundation for their building in conjunction with what we're doing at the district level. So you obviously are aware of the reorganization, and we just spoke about that with our coaches and our interdisciplinary folks and our facilitators, and with Renee, Director of Humanities, myself, in special education and early childhood, how we're all, and David, how we're all working together here, and that ripple effect is being felt throughout all of the steps that you just heard that are happening in the building level and the cohesiveness around that. So, and it also, this interdisciplinary approach that we're fostering at the district level is definitely allowing students to have multiple on-ramps to their different standards and repetition in each of those subject areas that as reteaching and making different modalities and different ways for the curriculum to become accessible. So these district changes really are impacting throughout the entire organization.
We really hit on a lot of the conversation earlier when the principal spoke, but I think more important than ever, having that multi-tiered system of support in place is key to addressing learning gaps. So in the image here, it really illustrates that, the multi-tiered system of supports the heart of what we need to do, but it's all based on data. So having a strong data-driven decision-making system in place that drives what kind of professional development that we need and training, and do we need to focus more on social emotional behavior supports and focus again on that tier 1. So that's all driven by data decision-making, and the new position that we have Carlo that's in, he's really facilitating that work with the MTSS, focusing on reviewing the data at a global perspective, and then how we break it down to the individual pieces, as the slide that Jeff was referring to. That really summarizes what our goal is for this school year and this cap, and how we're going to do that. And all of the work that we've been doing starting this summer, when we recognize how important having a strong MTSS structure was, we delivered the MTSS Institute focusing on Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, and providing instruction and PD on that, and utilizing our coaches to help deliver that PD, but then follow through throughout the school year.
Can I ask just one question, because I think and I'm not opening a whole can of worms, we don't have to have like a huge conversation on it if you don't want to, but I think I heard you say that there's instructional, or there's an intervention going on for all levels, so that means our kids at the higher end are also getting what they need, because I do know that in the past, or what I've heard from some parents over the last few years as their kids are getting into junior high and high school, they're bored at that elementary level because they've always, you said we're not leaving them behind, but there's not enough hands to go around to help those at that higher level. So when they get into high school, they don't really know how to study for the next group of tests. They've never really learned. It's just always been easy for them. So are we finding good intervention that is pushing them towards their highest capacity? Do we feel like that's working for them? So that, because we always talk about what our kids who need the supports get, but we don't really ever talk about
We've really
upper ends.
we've really tried to shift the conversation a little bit this year, and into this, starting in the summer. Our principals are doing a wonderful job of this at the building team level too, because when we talk about those 4 PLC questions, the 4th one is what do we do for students who have already learned it? Our tendency naturally might be to have them go on, like go do something else that's unrelated to the learning that's happening. What we've reflected on and come back to, and one of the reasons those interdisciplinary specialists are important to us, is how do we not push them on, but how do we push them deeper? So if my essential learning outcome has been defined and I have met that level of proficiency, rather than skipping ahead to something else independently, or going to the book basket, or going to be a peer tutor, which are all valuable things, don't get me wrong, those are all valuable things. How can I now, as a learner, go deeper into that particular learning? So I'm still learning the same thing that my classmates are learning, but I'm going to a different level with that learning. So that's really the focus we have now. We don't have that structure in place, but we want to build that. And I think you pointed out our teachers don't have that time. So how are we creating that time? How are our specialists, interdisciplinary work, Abby and Renee's positions as interdisciplinary directors can lead that work and help us identify those opportunities.
When you figure that out, I keep bringing this on. When you figure that out and get that going, I think that would be really great for those students, because as we've touched upon, there are those who don't feel that they are ready once they leave our district. And some of those kids who aren't feeling ready are the ones who might have needed that deeper learning. College is hard. They don't feel that they were prepared enough. So I'm excited to see when you get this up and going.
And it's happening in some places. I mean, it's out there. Our district, our teachers are doing some of those things. And I think that one of the other factors in this is embedding those social emotional competencies in that time is equally important, because the feedback we're getting from kids who are in college who say that maybe they wish they had learned something extra, are some of those social competencies that they didn't really have time to explore more in depth, like how do you communicate with people of differing opinions in a way that's constructive? How do you navigate social situations that are complex and complicated? How do you advocate for yourself in a way that is positive and appropriate? So that's all part of that deeper learning piece. So, okay, you've got the core knowledge. How do you apply it? How do you apply it working in a group? How do you apply it when people tell you you're wrong and they disagree with you? So all of those things, you know, that we have to go deeper with our students.
So picking up on the communication piece that was touched on in the conversation here and that Mark spoke about on his slide, the essential learning outcome site is obviously a huge manifestation of what's being done in our PLTs collectively to align and communicate horizontally and vertically the skills and standards that we want all of our students to be able to acquire every year. So a lot of work has been done with this site, and we did review it in our last board meetings.
So here's an example, I'm sorry, so what grade level this is, posting
This first one is 7th.
7. So if we pop down to a 6th grade, you scroll all the way up to the top.
I'm sure you're going to challenge me to try to see that.
I know, well, I was just thinking. So here's an example of 6th grade again, and if you were to click the science, and all of them have a course description, and then scrolling down, it captures the targets that they're focusing and working on, and then going down further on the slide. This is where you're starting to see some of the interdisciplinary work and how the standards that are being addressed in ELA are crossing over into science and social studies, and you'll see the integration of knowledge and ideas. So this is a form that we can use to start communicating with parents and students, and really having those images there to help with the dialogue with communicating with parents, having children look at this and refer to, oh, this is what you're learning and how you're getting there. So this could be a vehicle to have those conversations.
And the assessment piece will be added in there
Yes.
as well. So you'll have the idea of what the common assessments are and how those are being used. So a work in progress, and again, amazing amount of progress over the last 15 months of working on this. More work to be done, but the idea is, because we're not going to get more time, right? Time is not something we're going to get more of. How can we make the time more impactful? So we're hitting multiple standards across multiple disciplines with the work that we're doing in the classroom.
And how do I find that site when I go onto our website?
You can't yet.
There you go.
So it is
Keep looking for it.
It is a work in progress, and
Yes.
until it's ready to roll, and we're working with all of the disciplines, we're working at every grade level, we're working in every department. So there's a lot of alignment to do. Everybody had their own formats in some way in the past. This is bringing everything into one format, common language, and finding the time to trace those interdisciplinary connections.
Because we used to have the ability to go on the website and look and get some of that information, not in this way, not as deeply
You
involved.
had curriculum maps that were based
Yes.
on the standards and kind of.
Which I found helpful to be able to do that. So when we get that, that'll be a good resource for our kids and parents.
I know this won't surprise you, but no one has this yet. We're building this from the ground up.
I love it.
And so we've looked for models, we've looked for other places to borrow from, but this particular format and the way that it will link across disciplines doesn't currently exist in any format that we've been able to find so far. So we knew what we wanted, and our team is creating it. So.
And this second half of the year, we're really looking for feedback, so getting it in the hands of parents, all the teachers, students, does this satisfy what we need to communicate, to illustrate what you're learning, where we're going.
So you're ahead of me, because you're already started it.
And that concludes.
It was a very good
Thank
conversation.
you guys, for real, that was.
Thank you. This is often the most, it's probably one of the most challenging in depth and breadth presentation we do in the entire year. When we do with the secondary assessments, the 3A always tends to be this level of conversation. And it needs to be, because our youngest aren't proficient by the end of third grade, which has been our target. It needs to be, that really sets the foundation. And you heard the work of everybody in this room. There is so much work going on in every part of this organization that's really focused on what I heard a lot of tonight was we're trying to create that coherence. We didn't use that word tonight, but there's a lot of coherence, that collective commitment and understanding across all different levels of the organization about what we're doing and how it all fits together. It's not one aspect of the strategic coherence, but it's all the parts of that plan and all of it coming together. And so it's really, and unfortunately, right before COVID, we had some nice scores starting to pop in January of 19. Well, we're into 20, January 20. And it's unfortunate, but here's where we are. We have strong foundation systems and processes, and I heard that come out a number of times this evening. And a lot of support's in the right places. We just need to continue to stay the course, and we need to continue to make the adjustments necessary. And most importantly, we need to put it out there so people understand what we're doing and how it's working at all different levels for everybody to understand. And I think I heard that. I actually wrote it in big bold letters and with my pencil this evening. Just a lot of things, a lot of great thoughts. So good conversation tonight. Thank you for the entire team for what you brought this evening and what you bring each and every day, which is excellence in everything that you do. So thank you.
Ditto that in case you leave before the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Our second report this evening is our operations and finance, which always happens at our second meeting of the month.
Thank you, Mr. Balbino. Thank you. I'll start with our revenues and expenditures, period ending September 30th this year. So our current revenues are $29.7 million, representing 38% of our budget. And our expenditures to date, $12.9 million, representing 16%. And these are in line with our 21-22 actual revenues and expenditures. Our cash flow report, very similar, comparing with last year. Our current ending cash balance for July, August, and September are shown. So September, $19.4 million, and that's again in line with last year, considering that budget differential. And again, the graph that you see here, we've shown on a consistent basis. It gives you an idea of what our projected cash flow is moving forward. And again, for the past 3 months, it's been in line with our projections. Our third slide, these are our title grants. I wanted to give you a snapshot of the past 3 years of what those grants have, of the allocations in those grants. Any variance you see in here is generally due to enrollment differences, but with the exception of UPK, which we've talked about previously. The variance in UPK is due to the full day program. But for additional information, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Geithner to talk about how those grants are being allocated.
So I provided in backup a more detailed explanation of how those funds are being allocated. I didn't know if you had any specific questions. I won't take the time to go over line by line what those expenditures are, but generally our consolidated grant, the Title I, Title IIA, Title IV, and Title V grants are all around instructional support, professional development, and family and community engagement in various formats. As Dr. Lisi said, UPK, we saw a significant increase this year. That's for the full day edition that we have. The McKinney-Vento grant is to cover services and supports for students who are experiencing and families who are experiencing homelessness. You'll see a significant increase in that allocation there over prior years. That's based on the number of students who have been identified, plus additional funding that I believe came as a result of federal stimulus funding and allocation through the state. Our early college high school grant, actually there's a typo there. Our medical health sciences, in your backup that you received in my memo, the numbers are updated. So the IT grant is currently at $250,000, and the health sciences grant is currently at $200,000. And 611 and 619 are grants that support special education and preschool special education services.
Jerry, how many kids do we have enrolled in the IT and the health science?
Oh, I knew you were gonna ask me that question, and I completely forgot to write
That's
down the
okay.
numbers.
I was just curious.
Brian, do you know off the top of your head right now?
Nate and I talked the other day briefly, and he had talked like by next year, we'll have 240 kids in the 2 programs, so it's 120 each. So obviously, in the 3rd cohort of the 1, so right now we must be sitting right around 200 students. We've had a few kids that obviously may have said, you know, after their freshman or sophomore year, may have said, you know, this may not be my total interest. I may have come out, so there are kids that have benefited from the program because they've got some college credits and some focus in those areas. So we can get the exact numbers, but I know that we were talking about it, full allocation. What we also have found is, as we've had classes get older, in other words, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th cohort, we got better. The same thing that happens in a lot of programs. The kids are retained, they're staying in it because we've done a better job kind of recruiting, picking, and they've kind of seen it, and I think they talk to their peers. So I think we've got kids that are staying the course, literally more than before. And that's the same thing we saw that happened with our mechanical and electrical engineering programs up at, and the PTEC programs up at City as well. Same thing. Not very good in the beginning, but at the end, we're finding that those cohorts are holding, you know, and the kids are more confident.
Yeah.
Staying the course. It's hard to make a decision in 8th grade, you know.
Do they share, the coordinators and the leagues, they share?
Yeah, so that's one of the ways that we've been able to get more efficient. Like, as we got better at that, the staff is the same across both grades. So you have full-time staff, but they cover both programs. That's true of our staff here in the district and at the college. The support staff at the college are full-time positions because they're supporting both fields of study.
Thank you. As part of our operational report, I've asked Dan Sherman to join us. Dan's our Director of Technology and Data to give us an update on our technology.
Thanks. So before I start, I want to talk about I want to recognize the amazing staff members of our technology department, one of whom is over in the corner who supports our board meetings, Tim Wilson. We also have 2 city BOCES staff members that come in and work with our teachers with technology, professional development, and training, who also support the technology department. So I just want to recognize them because they are amazing. They work hard and they keep this district running, infrastructure, everything, working with our teachers. So I wanted to start with that before I jumped into some of the projects updates. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was our security upgrades and our camera system. So we have been upgrading all of our camera systems in all the buildings. The only building left to do is the Education Center, which will be starting soon. So we're in the process of securing the funding and ordering all the materials for that, and we will start those upgrades shortly, within the next couple of weeks. So in addition to that, we also have our door access system, which is being upgraded. So if you weren't aware, all staff receive a photo identification badge. It's got a built-in radio frequency tag, RF tag, that's what they kind of call it for short. Basically, it identifies that badge holder electronically with a code. And I have a picture up there on the screen there for you, is these little intrusive boxes near some of the doors. So when they tap the badge, that allows them to have access. Those badge numbers, all that is identified in the system, so we know who is going in, which doors, when, and it allows them to have authorized access to the buildings. So we're in the process of upgrading quite a bit of our door access system. So one of the things we're doing is we are switching from a company called Continuum to S2, and that is the provider of all of our sort of background, the way that the system works and behind the scenes. Most staff aren't going to notice any difference whatsoever when we do upgrade, and we've already proceeded about 50% done with the schools at this point. So the reason why we switched to this, it gives us a lot more granular control so that we can see who's coming in, when they're coming in. We also have a cloud-based solution so that we know, so say a door greeter or a building secretary or a principal needs to know, all right, who's coming in this door, and it matches up with our camera system as well. So we'll be able to actually match a photo from the photo ID badge system with the person who tagged in that door, and the camera system will be able to get a shot of them to make sure it really is that person that is supposed to be coming through that door. So say, for instance, someone got access to a badge, and is able to gain access to the building, we have a way of tracking who that is and what they look like, and checking to make sure that that matches their identification.
But can they, you got their badge, someone gets their badge, they go to the door, will they get in?
So will they get into the building?
If they have the badge, even though it's not that person's badge, will they get in?
Yes.
Shouldn't we have it so it's that face at the screen and that badge don't match, they shouldn't be allowed to get in?
So that's one of the things that we're going to be implementing with the camera system implementation with the door access system, so that actually will compare the pictures between the badge photo ID and the person that's coming through that door. So that's part of the system. So like I said, most of it's going to be unnoticeable. Most people won't notice it because the actual infrastructure on the outside of the doors and things like that isn't going to really change very much. So in phase 2, we're going to be upgrading our door reader systems. So we have cameras at our main access points to the buildings. We're going to upgrade that camera system, and you can kind of see, this is that little box up there. That is, it's very small. That screen is like this big. So it's very hard to see who is at that camera when they're holding up a photo ID to the screen, to the camera outside, trying to identify who they are. It's very difficult to see. So we're going to be completely upgrading that system. The cameras on the outside at the door reader stations, actually on the previous slide I had a picture of that. Those are going to be completely upgraded to a much higher resolution. They'll be more efficient in terms of lighting, and so that they will be able to see exactly who's at the door. One of the other nice things about this upgrade is that it will be cloud-based. So it's not just at that box, which is in the door reader station in the main offices. It's going to be cloud-based. So say someone needs to cover for the door reader, and they're in the main office, they can easily call up that system, and then they can see who's at the door, be able to buzz them in, ask for ID, talk to them about it before they need to access the building. So I kind of talked about that. It's an upgraded camera system to verify those badge entries. And then we're going to be moving into adding more door system access. So one of the things that's come up from some of our security conversations is that we need to be able to make sure that our authorized staff with badges are able to get into any door. So the next stage, phase 3, is going to be to add badge access points to every exterior door, to make sure that all of our staff members can get back into a building when needed, whatever door they happen to be most.
You mean into their specific home building, not
Into their home building.
every
Yes.
building?
Yep.
Okay.
So say you're at Fairgrave, and you're out at the playground, and for whatever reason, you can't get in that one door at the end next to the playground, and you need to go around the corner there to the area next to the loading dock, and there's not a badge reader there, you won't be able to get in, only the cafeteria door. And so we're adding badge readers to all those exterior doors so that you can get back into a building in the event of an emergency or a security situation. And like I said, this is going to offer us a lot more granular control. We're going to be able to match up who's accessed what door, when. The camera system will also be monitoring who's coming into the building. And that happens no matter what. We're already monitoring what's happening in the building with the camera systems anyway. But this will match up our door access system with the camera system, and it'll be much more tightly cohesive. Any questions about that before I move on to the next project? Okay. So I mentioned our City BOCES tech coaches who are supporting our staff with training and professional development. One of the things that they're working on intensely is making sure that staff have an easy way to access resources, training, webinars, videos, things that they need to use the different tech tools that we have in the district. Right now we have 92 licensed tech tools. We call them tech tools. They're anything from a website that we use a service for to a system where it's an app on a Chromebook or an iPad. So we currently have 92 licensed tech tools in the district, and that's a lot of capacity building there. So a lot of training needs to happen for the relevant staff members who have access to those services. So we are building this PD site. Over the summer, we did a complete revamp so that the entire site, and kind of coming back to that safety component, the entire site has a very similar format. So no matter which tech tool you end up at, you know, here's how you access, here's who has access, here's some resources for you, and it's arranged in a way that we hope will be very useful for the staff members. Because it's a website, the links can be sent easily, so we can easily send a link to a particular page to a tech tool, and we can update it on the fly. So we've had Zoom presentations and webinars that have happened in the past where we've immediately gotten a recording and we posted it right away on that PD site page for staff members who are absent, who need more information. One of the other things that we did too is we upgraded our list of tech tools. We call it the Tech Tools database. We're now in the Tech Tools 2.0 database. I know that's kind of cliche to be using that, but we completely changed the format of it. So, and this was based on feedback from staff members and teachers to make sure that it was easy to search for something, and then it was immediately obvious when you search for something, whether it was authorized to be able to be used based on privacy or licensing in the district with our students. And then we've connected that Tech Tools database, those links directly to PD site pages with training, and we're in the process of continuing to develop those. And lastly, I wanted to talk about digital forms. So a lot of the work that we've been doing lately is to improve the efficiency of all of our workflows in the district. I know that's something that Dr. Lacey and Mrs. Geithner have talked about, and Mr. Pepino a lot in the past. As part of our strategic coherence plan is to improve our efficiency of our infrastructure. And so one of the things we've been doing is we've been looking at some of our paper forms. I'm a little bit of a Harry Potter fan, so in the Harry Potter movies, when they go to the Ministry of Magic and they have the little flying airplanes and that's their interdepartmental memos that are flying around, that's what workflows looked like a little bit before. There was papers flying around, and sometimes they made their way to the right spot, and sometimes they skipped a person, sometimes they didn't necessarily get what they needed, and so there was a lot of inefficiency in that, and we were using different paper forms, and we were using different things. So one of the things we've been doing is replacing them with universal digital forms. We use something called form approvals, which we build a workflow. So we can just say, so a teacher submits a field trip form. The field trip form request then moves on to the nurse. The nurse looks at the numbers and the students who are attending, assesses what needs we have for that, for those particular groups of students, and then it moves on to the building principal so that they can approve or deny and give feedback on that field trip, and it moves on to Mrs. Geithner, and then it moves on to business office so that we can make sure that things get paid for. So we've been building those kinds of workflows. Some of the things that we've digitized recently are the transportation form, school variance requests, and even our internal staff employment application form. And this is where I want to highlight that our tech department staff, they have been doing an amazing job. They have risen to the challenge because some of these workflows are complex. Our building use form has at least 4 different workflows that it goes through depending on the answers to the questions that people fill out, and it's very complex. But we continue to improve on them, make sure that people know how to use these forms and train them how to use them, and also just improve on the efficiency and make sure that we get what we need for our staff members. Any questions?
Great, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Christina Schertz, our Director of Food Services, could not be with us tonight due to prior family engagements, so I will do my best to provide you with an overview of the program. Just very quickly, I just want to share with you that food services, just like every other area, is experiencing the challenges that we are locally and nationally, both with supply chain issues, rising costs, and so on. So what we're looking at is a way to balance those and try to find solutions for some of those issues. And just to share a few with you that Christina shared with me earlier. So for example, the supply chain issues, we're trying to bring in products earlier and sooner and try to think ahead in terms of what we may need to prepare for future needs and so on. Rising costs, one of the programs that Christina was mentioning to me is we're offering rather than just simply serving. and just so that students can actually decline what they won't eat, so we have less waste, and they're actually getting the things that they enjoy and like. So just simple things like that have helped address some of those issues. We've begun to transition to reusable supplies like trays that are washable. It's really simple things that she's thinking through just to be more efficient, and that's proving to be beneficial in the long run. And of course, being creative, and I tried to understand this a bit better today, but just using different seasonings to get students to eat more, to get them to like products better, and that's something that we're looking at. And I'm told it's not just the students that are liking it, but our adults that enjoy the changes, so that's been beneficial. And one of the things that Christine has tried to implement quite a bit, and the entire food services group is trying to do, is constantly monitor what's working and what isn't. And so that's proven to be quite successful as well. Other issues that have come up is the fact that we've been working a great deal in terms of morale with our staff, as we know that we've had some, again, not just us, but nationally, keeping people is really about morale and understanding the needs of our staff. And so we've been as successful as we can be in that area. I think that's very important. So with that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
Has the federal rate reimbursement changed at all with inflation, or now is it held pretty steady year to year?
Great question. I'm actually not sure. I don't believe it has changed, but I'll let you know for sure.
I just wondered how we're doing with providing or accommodating for students with special dietary needs.
Yeah, I know we're very conscientious of the needs of our particular students, but I will ask Christina how we're addressing those issues and get back to you.
I mean, given the supply chain issues and stuff, but also some of the dietary needs require attentiveness to where the food's prepared,
Yeah, absolutely.
separation.
Absolutely.
And one last thing, when you said we're trying to get more things in, wouldn't that require more refrigeration if you wanted to buy things in advance?
Sure. I think we're trying to consider those needs, and we're certainly looking at appliances in those areas and making sure that we can keep foods. For example, one of the areas we're looking at is more fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables, as opposed to frozen. So we're trying to try to build capacity in those areas as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other discussion? Thank you, Dr. Lucy. I will say that the kids, I was over at Granby today, and they had fresh blueberries. They had turkey taco rice bowls today that the kids were talking about, and the feedback was quite positive. And so we're getting a lot of feedback because it's one of the things that came up in the previous meeting. And so I know that our new director is also really exploring some different opportunities. One of the kids said to me, "They look a real good baked potato with cheese on top." And I'm like, we're real. But it was an interesting conversation with the kids. So they really are taking note of it. There's been a lot of fresh fruit. Also, I've noticed more. So I saw blueberries today, but I've seen lots of apples and oranges and all sorts of different kinds of things as well. And kids really utilizing and eating and taking those choices. So seeing some things. So it's good that we continue to explore. Because that was based on some feedback we had. We're always looking at ways to get our kids to participate. So, thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is our November 3rd, professional development for November 3rd and 4th. My computer is about dead, so I can't put it up there. It's about 14% right now. But November 3rd, we'll have the agenda to you. We can send it to you tomorrow. But Dom or Jerry, you can chime in. But we're just going to start on that day. We'll have a keynote speaker. We've talked from Catherine Schweitz should be speaking. Dom has arranged that with her. That'll be followed. I'll also be talking a little bit about our SLSPO, just whether we're looking to increase our security personnel, things like that. There also will be the overview of our shell cards, activity materials. There'll be things like that. Run, hide, fight. You want to talk about any of these things, Dom? I'm just kind of reading the page as my screen starts to flicker.
I'm happy to, sure. The Run, Hide, Fight video, if you're not familiar with it, it's a video put up by the FBI to help folks understand how to react during a crisis event like an active shooter. So it gives you strategies that help mitigate those incidences. So we'll be sharing that. And we've actually found a couple of videos that are actually geared towards whether it's elementary school or high school, to help not only mitigate the circumstances, but also how to address these situations with our students. And we think that that's a very important part of the process. So aside from the Run, Hide, Fight video, we're also building in an activity for our staff. And Mrs. Geithner, would you like to speak on that? That'd be,
Yes. Maybe. So part of our building day, the professional development will occur in each building. So building teams will be together, all members of the staff, clerical, custodial, aides and monitors, instructional staff, administrators, everybody will be together in their building. So part of the afternoon, teams will go back to their locations. So we're asking principals to develop groups that are in proximity physically, not necessarily all the same role. So where you're located physically in the building, you'll go back with your team and you'll go through an activity where you'll actually assess your classrooms. What do you see what's in there? Do your door locks work? How does your door open and close? What's outside your window? What can you see from outside your window? What can you see with the lights on? What can you see with the lights off? So they'll go through that activity collaboratively. They're going to fill out a Google form with the feedback and the answers from that time, which will go to the superintendent's team, the building principals, and facility and operations as necessary to make adjustments and come back and answer questions or address needs that have been noted through that process.
we'll also be sharing a local tip line. One of the mantras that we're trying to promote is see something, say something, to help prevent some of these issues. And so we'll be introducing this tip line beginning November 3rd. It'll be on our website and available for folks if need be. In the last part of the training, I want to thank Mr. Ells and Mr. Sheldon for finding trainers for the Stop the Bleed program. This would be a basic overview of that, but again, part of the bigger picture of safety and security and crisis mitigation. So our folks will be introduced to that as the last part of the training for the 3rd.
You are all invited that day. If you have time in your schedules, I think there's some great opportunities. I don't know if you'll be able to record our speaker. That's a possibility, that's something. But please, you're all invited. I want to just put that right out to everybody this evening. I know it's during the day, but if you can come for parts of it, if you'd really like to hear parts, please do that. And obviously, we'll provide a report at our next board meeting just to let you know how it goes. We'll be back here on the 8th of November, which is after those 2 dates. So, again, it should be an interesting day. I think it really is hands-on, interactive, thought-provoking kind of day. And that's what should happen in this topic. This topic of security should constantly be actively discussed and looked at because it's ever-changing. And you never know, what's going on. And so each day, just watching, you try to learn. And I think this one is rather comprehensive, but I think we're the feedback. I'm really looking forward to the feedback from that day as we move forward and really make decisions and budget and acquisition of resources and supports, things that we need to do immediately, perhaps that are easy, quick fix, and then other things that might be more long-term, hence cameras that you heard this evening, just as more of a long-term, larger project-oriented types of things, as well as some things that we hope to have down the road, that we know there are some areas of communication, obviously a topic we talked about earlier this evening, also is pivotal, probably one of the most key pieces with respect to security is around communication. So that's another area we constantly have to be looking at. On the November 4th, Jerry?
Sure, on November 4th, it's a countywide professional development day. So we have a variety of offerings between offerings that are provided by City BOCES and our county team, and then in-house offerings. So they are really tailored to specific groups. I'll give you some examples. We're doing some science. City is sponsoring science professional development for grades 5 through 12 science teachers. They're doing the writing revolution work for our teachers in grades 2, 3, and 4. They're doing specific professional development for health teachers, for PE teachers, for art and music teachers. So those offerings are all out there through City BOCES. In addition, our library media specialists also. In-house, we are doing collaborative teaming. So in the morning, from 8 to 11, our teachers TAs, all of our instructional support staff members, student support staff members, and our aides have the opportunity to select 2 sessions of their choosing in the morning. Some of those sessions include going back to what is a PLC and what happens within a PLC, an MTSS overview. We're also doing a 3-hour community bus tour. So we have 2 full Golden Sun buses. They are at capacity that will do a tour of our community to learn a little bit more about what's here and from an asset-based perspective and how we can help support our students and families in that regard. We'll also be doing restorative circle work and trauma-sensitive practice work. We have a really nice list of interdisciplinary opportunities for planning. So that will happen in the morning, and then from 12 to 3, those teams will get together in like groups. So for example, 5 through 12 ELA teachers are going to collaborate. 7 through 12 social studies teachers will be collaborating. You'll see that kind of collaborative work time. We have facilitators and structures built in for that afternoon, so hopefully very rewarding for the teachers and very productive because they'll come away with some product of that collaboration to apply back in their classrooms.
A lot going on here just in that day as well. Welcome. So we'll send you those as well this week, so you'll have the actual agendas so you can look at them and reference them. And finally, the educational center space utilization. You know, one of the challenges in our district has always been space utilization. When we say, gee, our enrollment has decreased over the years, what's also happened is we have increased the number of supports and services in all of our schools, which require space. And so each one of our schools is challenged when you walk through them. They have trouble finding rooms where they can actually bring PLCs together because there's no space because every classroom is used and every space is used. So we're really looking at that component. The other thing that's been a challenge is the storage in each of the buildings. And you know, even though we tend to be pack rats to a certain extent in a lot of different things, you find the test from many decades ago. But we've been also doing a lot with making sure that we're culling things out using our policy 6900, which is our removal of disposal of items. So that's our policy 6900, disposal of district property. We've really been doing a lot with that, you know, auctions, this, that. We've really been trying to cull through things. We still have Verity boxes, and those of you that had the opportunity to tour with us at the beginning of the year, we had, I think we were upwards of 8 to 10 Verity boxes across the district because there was literally no space to store things at our schools. So I think that's been a challenge as well. The other piece that we've talked about in previous years during the budget process in particular, we've talked about the business and what we've done with our business office in previous meetings and how we've become extremely more efficient in that area and how we're really interfacing that with our human resources. But the other piece is you have to look at your centralized receiving and processing. And that's also been a challenge because you've got items coming into buildings and this and that. And I know that sounds easy, but when you have things coming in, you want things to come in efficiently, brought in, logged in, checked in, that what we ordered came in, was paid for, it goes out, and it gets to the buildings and into the classrooms as efficiently as possible. And it's not having the secretaries at the schools stopping, putting or logging things in, so on and so forth. So, you know, because the space is the premium and schools have that storage capacity issue, the other component we have is that, you know, when I decentralized central offices a couple of years ago, it was really in response, one, in part to, we had a forgiveness, but we had an issue with our transportation. And thank you to our politicians and to this board who stayed the course of the last 4 years. And we got that legislation this year, so we don't have a $1.5 million possible garnishment that we were looking at, that's one of the reasons why we did reach out and worked with BOCES on utilization of our space. That was addressed in April, and we're finding by having more of a decentralized situation, it's also taking up space in some of the schools. I'd like to bring us back to the Education Center in 23-24, and we have reached out and had some conversation with the district superintendent at BOCES, and so we've got some preliminary work, and we work together very closely to create that transition. I believe this will be effective, more efficient. It'll allow us to get some more space back to the buildings, also literally space for storage and things like that But I know it sounds simple, but we're using every part of the building, those small offices, small spaces. I think our principals have gotten very creative. But when we find we don't have any group space where we can bring teachers together in school, you start to realize that's how full we actually are. And I think this will help us realize a lot of the things that we talked about earlier. That opportunity to have workspaces, opportunities to have data up in rooms where you can really walk in and it's always right there. That type of thing where schools can really get creative and monitoring their kids very closely. There's a lot of different things that this can help with. So that's a recommendation I made to the board. I'd like to move forward, with that, but I wanted to talk about that publicly and have that conversation. It's not a situation I take lightly because, spaces are premium in the county as well for every school. Just like us, they also have a lot of added supports and services in their schools as well. And I think we've provided a great service, here in Fulton, providing a centralized space. But I think right now our needs and what we need to do, I think it puts us in a situation where we have to move in this direction.
It's no small thing though, with the receiving. That's been an issue for us and we've worked very hard for several years to tighten up our records and to manage that. But one of the biggest things that gets in the way for folks here in the district is a space. So that centralized space should help us clean up our, record keeping and we can get even better. But it's tough when you're piecemealing and different people, trying to get different people, make sure they're all trained, so many people, how to receive that and accurately document for the business office, in turn for our claims auditor, which comes back to us. So this will help a lot for our accountability.
And with that, that's, I believe,
Thank you.
officially went off a second ago. That is the last item in the superintendent's report. Thank you.
All right, I have item 4.01 to accept our financials.
Move it.
Second.
Are there any questions or any discussion on any of these items? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passed 600. Item 5.01, approved committee on special education recommendations.
Move it. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passed 600. Item 5.02, approved girls wrestling.
Move it. Second.
Any discussion on this item?
Do we have a coach?
You'd have to ask Brian, I don't know.
We do not have a coach yet. We
Okay.
have posted and are working towards having one.
Yeah, Mr. Ells is here, but we are planning, I hope, for November 22nd or whatever, what is today? Our next board meeting, to have a candidate.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed and abstentions? Passed 600. Item 5.03,
Move it.
approve the combined boys swimming team.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed and abstentions? Passed 600. Are there any questions regarding first reading of policies? Was there a first reading of policies? I don't have to list on this. Okay, would you like to batch items 7.01 through 7.12, our personnel?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion on any of these items? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed and abstentions? Passed 600. Board forum, Mrs. Davenport, would you like to start?
Yes. And I remember to turn it on. Maybe it's working, okay. So there was a lot of information to digest, but I did really enjoy the conversation that we had. There was a lot of tough stuff that we put out there tonight. A lot of stuff that I know you guys, the principals and our admins are working on, but it's good to put it out there for the public to hear and know that, how hard you guys are working for each and every one of our kids every day. So thank you so much for all the work that you guys have done. I'm excited about going to the conference this week. It's nice when we get an opportunity ourselves to get in there and learn some things that are going on and to network with our other colleagues across the state. So that will be really interesting. I heard that homecoming was amazing last weekend. A lot of students very happy to have been on their home field. We got to watch the game from home, so that was really nice. Kids, I heard, had a great time at the dance, so it was nice to have a good normal homecoming for our students, so that was awesome. I'm sure there's more stuff. I know we talked a lot about things that I had questions on earlier, so thank you, Jerry, for all of that. Don, thank you for your reports. And with the food services, we are still doing please tell me what it's called,
Community eligibility provision.
CEP. We are still doing that, and that is going well. We are sustaining. Okay, that is awesome to hear as well. That is it for now.
Thank you. Jen, how about you next?
Thank you to our principals, Renee, Abby, Mrs. Geithner, for being patient and teaching us about the coherence plan, your instructional priorities, explaining in great detail how we're going to get there and all the steps that are involved, because it's a lot. And so thank you for trying your very best in making us better and making our students better. Thank you, Dan, for the update with the security system, ensuring our safety for the staff and for our students, for all of your work with the tech tools and the PD and revamping the site and all that. That doesn't go unnoticed. So thanks for making that more user-friendly and efficient, it sounds like. So that's great. Homecoming was amazing. Thank you to the Booster Club and Mr. Els. That was very successful. I really liked how you had Oswego and Fulton. I think that was very good. Good thinking there. Yeah. So I think that helped a lot too. Mr. Murray and all of his staff for a successful dance. I don't think there was any fights, and if it wasn't that bad. So, so it sounds like a great time was had by all. Well, that's like a plus, right? Everybody's afraid of that. So everybody had a great time. You won. Perfect. Go Fulton. Go Raiders. Yay. All right, let's move on.
Jess.
Yeah, I just want to also just kind of piggyback, thank you guys for being here, and your work is greatly appreciated, and I'm glad that we can have open conversations about stuff. It helps, it definitely helps. Also, homecoming, great. I love seeing our youth sports. I think a lot of our teams had a youth night, soccer, football, we've had basketball do it in the past, and I think that's so important for our young kids to come up and see, what our student athletes are doing and stuff, so, and that's it.
Hey.
I only had one item, and that was just, I don't think the City of BOCES board meeting last week was recorded, but Roseanne Bain did an excellent presentation. She actually provided the same presentation to the city board at their retreat this past summer. And really, it was a look at Oswego County as a whole, the graduation rate compared to the state. It didn't dissect by district, but it was very interesting data for us to know as a BOCES board, and I think it would be excellent data for our board. I'm sure Roseanne would love to present sometime when she's invited, so that's all I had.
Thanks, Dave. Tim.
Oh, I want to thank everybody for the presentations. Homecoming must have been a success. I didn't hear Mr. Bovino doing any crowd surfing, so it must have went well. Mr. Greer, great to see you. Do you feel like Michael Corleone in The Godfather 3? You want to hold you back in? These things happen?
He hasn't changed, Mr. Greer, at all.
I love it. I would like to just share again, as my colleague, my appreciation for everyone that was here tonight to present. and for taking the time to work with us, to help us work through all of this data and to understand it to the best of our ability. I know it's hard on one evening to answer so many questions, and sometimes we were on the same page, and sometimes we were in different directions as a classroom. I think we probably reflect the classroom, so I can appreciate what a frustration teacher must have when they have times 2 or 3.
Stop looking at me when you say that.
Because you and I were really doing a good job.
Just kidding.
You and I were really good at it. Right. And that's okay, because that's how we learn, or at least that's how I learn. I think most people do. And again, my appreciation for all the administrators here this evening. I know you work very hard to give us material at board meetings so that our meetings are meaningful. And I want to just reiterate, 1 or 2 of my colleagues have already said this. It was a very rich conversation tonight about the purpose that we come here for. And so I appreciate that from all of you. This is what we should be talking about, and I'm very grateful for all of you taking that time. And just principals, if I didn't see you last meeting, happy Principals Month, and again, thanks for what you do every day, and the rest of the administrators that support our principals, thank you for supporting them so that they can continue to keep it, hang in there and for the good fight. I don't have anything else, so, oh, yes, I do, I lied. Thank you for the gifts and the cupcakes. It's nice to be recognized, and you folks did a really nice job to recognize us for board appreciation, and I just wanted to thank those that were responsible. Second public forum, anybody wish to address the board on an item germane to tonight's meeting? Come on, it's your chance to go ask.
They already did.
No, I didn't make go ask now. No, 1, 2, 3, they're not gonna do it. Okay. Item 8.03, are we having an executive session?
May I say one thing?
Yes.
Congratulations to Mr. Capani and Mr. Kukowski. Looking forward to everything that you have to still offer to our district, so thank you so much. And I did have one more thing, but it's really for you, Mrs. Geithner. You're, at some point, no, I'm not attacking, I'm asking. At some point, because the restorative practices piece, and I know you're doing something at the PD day, and we did some stuff this summer. At some point, can you bring us back an update and just kind of let us know how things are going, how our students are faring with that, and any feedback that maybe teachers might have about that particular?
Maybe how we're doing.
I would love to. I would love to. That would be a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just a little tired, so I forgot earlier.
Thank you for remembering. So this brings me to item 8.03, executive session.
There are no items.
There are no items, so we're not having an 8.03. Okay, so that brings me to adjournment. 9.01. Was that
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Pass 600.
Cupcakes, everybody wants one.